Where are the low value men? Like, what are all the low value men up to during these trying times? Because the high value men, I know they're around. They won't shut the fuck up. Low value men, I have not heard a word out of. I'm starting to think I'm on their side. I think I want one of those. I want a low value man. They don't make podcasts. I haven't seen one low value man make a podcast. Do they not know how to use microphones? Maybe that's a good thing. That's hot. All right, I've never seen a man use a microphone for good.
Until now, everybody buckle up. It's low value mail time with your host, Danny Polishchuk. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to an all-new episode of Low Value Mail on this November 21st, 2023, in the year of our Lord. This is episode number 86, and boy, do we have a banger for you this evening. I am very excited about this. The one and only Mark Dice is joining us on the show. If you know anything about Mark Dice, I'm sure a lot of you know him. He does not do a lot of podcasts, so we are super lucky. I don't know if he's ever done a call-in show. We're going to find out. We're going to ask him. We are going to find out. But we are very lucky to have him. If you don't know who he is, Mark Dice is a media analyst, a YouTuber, author of numerous books. He's a prolific author, and he's got a new one out right now called The War on Conservatives, and he will be joining us very, very shortly. Before we get started, please like and subscribe if you're listening to this over on Spotify or Apple or whatever you're listening. Leave me a review. All that stuff really helps. Tell one of your friends. Say, hey, are you autistic and you like talk radio? Then there's this thing on the internet that's like talk radio, but it's kind of not. But it is. It really is just like a talk radio show. Totally uncensored. No call screeners, which maybe I should have one, but we don't have one. And if you'd like to support the show because you want to see this show, become longer. Eventually, this is going to be a 4-hour show one day. I don't know. It might be 10 years from now, but this is going to be, we're going full coast to coast. This is going to be a 4-hour show, multiple guests. If you want to help me get that show to that point, you can do so for as little as $5 a month. And you get all the episodes if you're a listener ad-free. So it's a good deal. Patreon.com/lowvaluemail, MAIL. If you caught me on Tim Pool last night, and a bunch of you sent me a lot of kind messages, thank you very much. I'm still wearing the same sweater because I came straight to the studio from Baltimore, and that's where I was staying. And also, there's YouTube memberships on now. I pumped the YouTube memberships last time, if you remember, and then YouTube gave me a strike and demonetized my other channel for life. So I will not, and that'll probably happen. Realistically, this channel is getting demonetized at some point. I don't want to jinx it, but we all know with the guests that I've been bringing on that's just what is going to happen. So we just know that, right? Like, it's just that's what's going to happen. So whatever. If you want to support the show, do so. If you want to buy a YouTube membership, you get some like stupid emojis. Otherwise, that's it. Okay, tomorrow night, no episode of The Bathhouse, the ultimate comedy hang. If you've never seen it, it's Thanksgiving. I hope everybody has some good Thanksgiving plans. I highly recommend, if you have like a very political family, go get a hat. If you have time, go get, those pink, like I'm with her hats or whatever, like the Hillary Clinton, like Women's March hats. You want to get a half Women's March hat and a half Make America Great Again hat. Sew them together right down the middle, and you just wear both, and that'll cover all your bases. But no Bathhouse tomorrow night. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode. And next week on Low Value Mail, we have Yoan Grillo, if you know who he is. He covers Mexican drug cartels. He's a journalist, author, and I'm super pumped for that. And now, without further ado, we are going to bring on the man, the legend, Mark Dice, everybody. And there we go.
I made it.
Mark Dice, everybody. Thank you for coming on. Oh, actually, hold on. I'm so stupid. I don't have a producer, so I got to move. Here we go.
I know how it is.
And there we go. Yeah, you've been doing this a long time. You've been in the game.
I'm an OG YouTuber, man. Yeah, it's since 2006, actually. And those were the good old days. You know, that was when you could basically say whatever you wanted to within the guidelines of the terms of service, which back then were reasonable.
They were
You know, like I
reasonable.
never worried about getting strikes or having something taken down because, you know, unless you were just blatantly copywriting something, ripping
Like
off
unless you were
somebody's
committing
shows,
crimes, essentially.
or like posting ISIS videos or something, you
Yeah,
know,
like
or
if you were
porn,
trying
like
to
it never was
live
going to happen.
right, and then now they're just. The problem
It's
now is
insane.
there's no consistent. The thing I wish for the most, obviously, I wish they would just all chill. But if there was some consistency across platforms, like there's none. So you're like, I my whole life right now is because I'm all, I post all my stuff everywhere, and then I'll be like, oh, they took it down from this platform. I'm like, I just got
Comedy.
comedy.
Comedians,
I just
they're
got kicked off
banning music.
Instagram.
They banned music, dude. Like Bryson Gray has had songs taken down because he was talking about COVID. He's an independent rapper. There have been other things. I think he might have had some songs taken down for supposed hate speech. When Tom
Yeah,
McDonald had a song that was trending, they pulled it from the trending list. And then because you could go on the trending list for music and see it was, number 12 or whatever in that category. It might even been for that day. And you're going down the list and then you're like, oh, here's number 11. And then there's number 13. They literally just took it off the list, but then it still showed on his channel that it was trending at number 12 or whatever it was. They're banning music, dude.
yeah. Do you see any similarity between kind of like the early days of YouTube and like what Rumble's doing right now?
Yeah. Dude, Rumble's terms of service are basically what YouTube was back then. Rumble is the only alternative for YouTube that has really made it because there have been many attempts. Many have tried and failed. BitChute is still going, still never took on as a mainstream platform. It's still considered to be, even though there's some big names over there, never got the mainstream status because that is the only true free speech platform. I mean, Rumble's going to take videos down. They're going to be faced with a really difficult decision, especially in the next year, about banning certain individuals or banning content or getting taken out from the App Store because you're already seeing Elon getting faced with that as well. And he's still trying to play both sides by saying, "Oh, we're free speech, but Alex Jones isn't allowed. We're free speech, but stuff that's deemed hateful, racist, anti-Semitic, whatever. Still, some of that stuff's still not allowed." He did, give credit to Elon where it's due, allowing a lot more discussions about transgenderism, and COVID stuff, and all that, but Twitter still is not a free speech platform, and neither is Rumble. It's
they're a public company. If anything, Twitter probably is a little more leeway because at least they're not like beholden to public shareholders.
Well, and they're going to have to make tough decisions as well because there's going to be intense pressures. There already is. I mean, they're twisting the knife in them. They found I'm supposed to say this, the chink in his armor. That's another offensive term, but they got that now. The wagons are the sharks are circling, trying to get him with his recent response to some of these posts, and it's going to be tough, man. And I was like, bro, this guy doesn't know what he's getting into, even if he means well. Yeah. And as big of a genius as he is, and I don't care that he's got all these companies, he's transforms all these different industries. Dude, this is not like 2010 social media, man. This is an information weapon. This is shaping the culture, shaping the news cycle, and they can't allow that to be taken over by a guy who is going to allow the kinds of discussions that need to be made or the kinds of discussions that are allowed on Gab or BitChute, along with some of the offensive stuff and the offensive users. But, like Andrew Torba says, if it doesn't break the law, it's allowed on Gab.
Right.
So his terms of service is the First Amendment.
That's kind of what the whole crux of free speech is. Is like you have to, tolerate the speech that you don't like. That's even more important. Like that's the whole.
Yep.
That is the whole point of it. And I mean, another thing too with obviously like them coming. It's not even so much the speech on Twitter or whatever X. Actually, Tim Pool last night, for the first time I'd heard him, they're referring to it now as Twix, which I haven't heard that. But
I think it's a terrible rebrand, actually.
Yeah.
X is too generic.
I think what he's trying to do is, I think this is at least my theory, and I think I've heard this maybe elsewhere, but it's just a money thing because he's calling it X. Then X is like Twitter can only ever be what Twitter was. Like in terms of it'll never be worth more than he paid. But X, he goes, well, we might have a financial services arm to this. There might be this. There might be AI. And then he's going to take it public again and be like, hey, it's worth $100 billion and get his money back.
Yeah, but you still could have done that with Twitter because you see all these weird, Robinhood, the financial, trading company, right? So you could pick any corny name. And Twitter was such a powerful brand that it might take a while to stick, but it's just such a generic term, you know, like as a search term.
I still use it. I'm not.
It's terrible. I will forever call it Twitter.
Yeah, me too. But but I mean, a huge element with even the speech thing that I was saying is like, you know, it's just taking away eyeballs from the media right now. You know, like the media is probably, if you're like CNBC or not CNBC, like MSNBC or CNN or Fox or whatever, you're like, they're just taking eyeballs away from you. Like that's probably their biggest concern more than anything.
Yeah. Well, that's why after Trump was elected, when the empire struck back, that was when they all really partnered with the big tech platforms, the legacy media, because then Facebook was literally funding shows for Anderson Cooper live, Anderson Cooper's 360, Facebook edition or whatever it was called, that couldn't even get, 1,000 viewers on it, but they were literally just paying them to do shows, and a bunch of other like popular brand name hosts, because they knew. I mean, remember the engagement for independent content creators in 2016 was off the charts. I mean, that's when most of these, the YouTubers, the Twitter personalities, like that was where they were born basically. And you had a bunch of people like me who, been around and had a good following, but then like we all just skyrocketed in 2016, the build up to that election. But then part of the, the launch of the fake news, the war against fake news was the empire striking back to then co-opt that new technology that they were so stupid. They just thought it was like, well, this is neat. You can communicate with their friends and you can post messages on it and, cat videos and whatever. And then there's people like me who are like, dude, we're just going to do a whole show on here. And we were siphoning off so many millions of viewers.
We're just about to replace you guys and you're not even realizing it. So you got a new book out. You're how many books do you have? 13 books?
13 or 14. I would have sent you a copy actually, except I just got them. I only had one copy from the printer of the proof. So I literally just got them. But the war on conservatives, that's why I'm here, Danny, to I know I have a reputation as a kind of a class clown and a troll, interviewing people on the beach.
I mean, you are a top tier troll.
Adding farting sounds to clips of CNN. So I thought, you know what? I really want to rehabilitate my image and be taken seriously as the intellectual and writer that I am. So I thought, what better show to do that than yours?
Thank you.
So
low value. I'm personally honored, man. That is so cool of you. So basically, I mean, I think we can gather from the title of the book, but what are your specific beefs? Because there's a lot going. There's so much interesting stuff politically that's happening right now, and obviously we're gearing up for an election. So, I mean, do you touch on like where you think we're kind of going to be going from here in the next little bit? Is it that, or is it not that
broken
broad?
a little bit? I mean, just the lawfare, silencing the critics through legal system, but it tracks what has happened in the numerous sectors of society, from in the schools, in the church, the rise of anti-whiteism, the LGBTQism, and on the surface it kind of sounds normal, but for news junkies, they're like, oh yeah, I've heard that, but it's a compilation basically of the rise of this bizarre form of Marxism or cultural Marxism, from what was a normal society to this incremental frog boiling in the pot. All they want to do is get married. Oh, then now they're reading books to the children dressed to drag, and they're making the kids go through the drag queen. So it's a lot of stuff that a lot of people know about, but then it goes really, really deep. And I think it's a good compilation, not only for people who have followed the news, to just kind of look back and say, like, oh yeah, gee, I kind of forgot that happened. I mean, even at the end of the book, when I'm reviewing it, I was like, oh man, yeah. Because as I'm writing it, as things are happening, I'm sourcing it, so much has happened that we kind of tend to forget about it. But if you really look at like a condensed version of how far the culture's changed in the last, couple years alone, like it's horrifying, and it's no longer like,
it's been like just shocking almost.
And the difference between Republicans and Democrats is no longer like, where do you stand on abortion or nuclear war or tax cuts for the middle class? It's like, do you support transing 5-year-olds and having drag queens read them books and forcing the kids to participate in these, pride parades in schools, and telling 5-year-olds that, well, maybe they are a girl and boys can, magically change into girls and vice versa? In abortion up to the moment of birth, and the systemic anti-whiteism, which we've now kind of seen a spill over onto Jewish people. And
I actually wanted to touch on that specifically, because I've been pretty against the anti-whiteism. I'm Jewish myself, obviously, for people who don't know somehow. And But I've been against the anti-whiteism, and I'll say like it was a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was just specifically targeting me because I was like, I remember so early, I go, this doesn't make any sense because they're trying to like, some people are trying to like differentiate whites and Jews, obviously. Like one of my favorite trolls right now on Twitter is I'll be like, I say I'm white. And then the people who are like, super far right, like, whatever, like white people are like, you're not white. And then, but the anti-whiteism was when they were, trying to be an actor and all this stuff. And they're like, you can't, we're not hiring white guys right now. And so I saw that so earlier. I go like, this doesn't make sense. And now it's so funny to see all these Jews being like, what's going on? Like, since when are we white? And I'm like, I've been telling you for like 8 years, you're white.
That's a complicated situation, but the systemicness of it has been growing and growing, and it's been a taboo topic to even say up until recently. Yeah. Hey, there is a lot of racism against white people, because if you said that a couple of years ago, people would be like, whoa, that sounds pretty weird. What are you, some kind of white supremacist? But
legitimately.
You start pointing it out and seeing that it's not just a couple fringe figures, and it just keeps going, and it has become institutionalized. And it's like, okay, look, what happened to Martin Luther King's credo of, judge a man by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And yes, the slavery was bad. We did some terrible things a long time ago. Civil rights movement, even 50 years ago, got over, some of the remaining hurdles. Even I would say Obama finally like broke through that ceiling. And even though I thought he was a communist, and I didn't even vote for Mitt Romney back then.
American.
Yeah, exactly. But I was happy. It was like, that was a good, like, that is a milestone for America to see, like, I'm proud, I'm glad, I'm happy for these people that they were able to achieve that. It was a milestone to kind of show, and it depends kind of where you are. I mean, I'm in Southern California, and with the exception of like certain pockets, very little racism here. Like this is the ultimate intercultural area where people's identities aren't wrapped around their race. Our identity is, we're in Southern California, man. This is the greatest city in the world. It's 72 degrees every year. Like this, we're so blessed to live here. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're from or what race you are. But then Obama started pitting the different races off against each other, and that's what the cultural Marxism is. It's painting, instead of the working class pitting against the business owners and the landlords, it's all the non-whites then pitted against the whites, who are like the oppressor class. And it's just gotten so out of control that it's spilled over finally where people are talking about it, but literally for years. Like if you said
like
anything
third
about
rail thing where
it would be like
the most
whoa,
toxic.
That's a little weird. Like, what do you mean? What are you doing standing up for white people?
Oh yeah. Like I remember, I was doing comedy. I'm from Canada and living in Canada, and you're like, you were so just radioactive. If you even, like, if I were to say, hey, like all these people keep telling me I'm not allowed to work because I'm white, people would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, dude, you can't,
it's become comical.
Conversation you should be having or whatever.
There's plenty of material for comedians out there, but it's tough for you guys, I'm sure, because who would ever have thought that comedy would be canceled? It was like the one thing that was usually uncancelable is jokes. It's one thing to post a video or a tweet or a serious interview, but like we're banning comedians, they're demonetizing comedians, canceling shows. Like you guys have done great, the handful who are really like pushing back against this. And at some point my hope is that what you're doing will become mainstream, where because you're on the forefront of this kind of comedy, mocking the wokeness, which now is kind of in our circles. It is.
I mean, even like Saturday Night Live now is starting to take these little shots at it and pretending they're like, oh, but we've been kind of doing this the whole time. The most annoying thing to me is you're right, and that is what's going to happen, because that's what always happens with any sort of like kind of thing, is everybody finally catches up, but then they're all going to pretend like they weren't doing it.
Well, they were the cutting edge. They were on the cutting edge. It wasn't the hard, the guys in the trenches, the YouTubers, the independent stand-ups. Like if you're not welcomed into that creative artist agency club, if you're not brand friendly, but But it may be, if the pendulum swings back the other way, then we could become a normal society again. But we probably still have some ways to go, especially with the election next year and the likelihood of Trump going to prison and that whole mess. Like we can get into that. But if you look back in history at how kind of ultra conservative society used to be, and that back in the 50s, they didn't even show on I Love Lucy the two in the same bed because that was considered to be too sexual.
Really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. And so they had twin beds whenever they showed them in the bedroom, or at least for the first couple seasons. And even in the Brady Bunch, they didn't show a toilet in the bathroom because they thought ooh, a toilet's disgusting. We don't want to, disgust our viewers. So if you look back at the Brady Bunch, and that was even kind of before my time, but I still, as I was a kid, there was those reruns were still going on, some of the broadcast syndication shows. There's no toilet in the bathroom specifically because it was considered to be too disgusting. So if society went from that, where it was too sexual to show a couple in bed together, Lucille Ball and Ricky or whatever his name is, to basically what we have now on mainstream network television, maybe the pendulum can kind of swing back the other way. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, and it feels like it's getting really the rubber band's getting super stretched. Yeah. But I've also been feeling like it's been like that for a little bit now too, So, and I guess maybe the analogy there is when it snaps back, it's going to snap back violently. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Well, that's why Rumble comes into play, because people can finally have that outlet. And Twitter again now. I saw you guys on Tim Pool last night, joking about some of the first things that people were saying after Elon took over Twitter is there are only two genders.
Yeah.
It was I think that might have even been trending, right? Because that was the forbidden, that was the forbidden truth you couldn't post on social media.
Kicked off. And I mean, I'll even say to Twitter's credit today, because I saw Elon post something where he goes, put all your videos in your highlights tab, and then they're more likely to get higher reach. So then I started to go add them to my highlights tab, and then I saw that the Arab Sandler video that I did, the Jew song, was basically we're not showing this. And then I tweeted about it, but then there was an appeal for it, and I appealed it, and they actually just were oh, sorry, we made a mistake. And it was kind of, whereas every other platform, I got kicked off of Instagram. I mean, I've been railing all this nonstop. I'm demonetized from YouTube. So at least I don't know, it works, I guess, the system somewhat. So I want to actually, because I have a little running theory. I'm just curious, because I think you have a super good sense of the culture for how things are going. But did you notice an acceleration with all this stuff the moment Trump showed up in terms of his political career? Because I have a bit of a theory on that.
He energized the kind of the populist movement, the kind of the conservative movement, taking over the government again as a businessman versus the corrupt politicians. But then immediately after that, I mean, we can't forget that the supposed war on fake news started immediately after he was elected. And then Hillary Clinton and everyone's out there saying that it was fake news on Facebook from the Macedonian teenagers that went viral, and it demonized Hillary Clinton. And so they didn't vote for her because of these fake news stories, spread from these teenagers in Macedonia who were just coming up with these clickbait websites. That was literally the first phase of the supposed fake news problem. And then it became the Russians. But then we know that the Russians were playing both sides because they had the biggest Black Lives Matter page. They organized a protest that Michael Moore went to outside of Trump Tower. So they're always going to spin it oh, the Russians were trying to demonize Hillary and the Russians are boosting President Trump. Well, they were just sowing chaos. They just wanted to do both sides because they literally started a Facebook group Black Activist was one of them, a couple other ones, and they started events. And Michael Moore literally went to a protest outside Trump Tower that was organized by one of the Russian bots. So you can't say with a straight face that the Russians only interfered to boost Trump. They just wanted total chaos.
They're just chaos, yeah. And
but that's when
go ahead.
But that's literally when they changed the algorithms, because on YouTube from day one, it was YouTube. It was our tube, it was our place, right? But then the search results got manipulated over there. And everybody knows about the algorithm manipulation, but the search results on YouTube were always fair, and it wasn't based off of views. It was based off of watch time, which is actually a good metric, because somebody could game the system and get 1 million views on a video by clickbaiting it and having a garbage video. that everybody clicked off as soon as they clicked onto it. They're like, okay, this is crap. This is deceptive, right? So they ranked the views of the videos in search based off of the watch time. So, if 10,000 people clicked the video and watched 80% of it, that video ranked high because the algorithm knew that it was a quality video.
Yeah.
So like you could search for anything on YouTube. I remember in the early days, dude, like you could search for Sean Handy's name and like my videos calling into his show, trolling him about the Bohemian Grove were like the top search results. Okay. And you could search for like Don Lemon is an idiot. Okay. And it would be YouTube videos of YouTubers making fun of Don Lemon. But now if you literally do, anything about any mainstream figure, they've artificially boosted those search results to show mainstream channels. So like, it'll all just be clips of CNN. You could put in probably like an exact title of a normal YouTuber's video. If it has to do with a news related content, Don Lemon is an idiot, whatever. Brian Stelter, is a clown, and it'll just boost videos from the mainstream network. So it never was like that in the early days. And because of that, my channel and any other channel that's deemed news, and it doesn't matter like what you tag it, like they know, the algorithm knows based off of what you're talking about. And so they're going to have their internal tags on it. So that was immediately in like 2017 or it was right in early 2017. All of a sudden the search results changed. And we've seen like admissions of this with, I think it was Chris Hayes at MSNBC was complaining about the search results for the Federal Reserve because it was documentaries about the Federal Reserve from independent YouTubers. And he's like, this is terrible. I can't believe these search results. And then they changed it. Those like slipped through the cracks. Okay.
The odd ones kind of slipped through. Yeah.
The most popular one.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Well, I'll just
the most popular one is Brie Larson. Welcome to the Mark Dice Show, everyone. Danny's just along for the ride here. We'll be going to our guests in just a moment here. But the most popular one was Brie Larson with one. You probably saw this, one of her movies. People were criticizing her for spewing feminist talking points on the circuit. And then that was the top search result for her name in that video. And that wasn't considered news related. So that slipped through the cracks. So then they literally added her name. And they admitted this to like the slate.com writer who wrote about it. And then YouTube got back with them and they're like, oh yeah, we added her name to the, weighted boosted results. And then we had that one YouTube employee, Zach Voorhees, leak like a lot of the terms and a lot of the internal discussions and things like that. So like, it's just sad because then new YouTubers who are talking about news, it's impossible to build up your channel at this point unless you were early like me and kind of got that prime real estate and built up your fan base that you already have. Like my channel doesn't grow anymore at all, dude. It doubled in size from 2016 to 2017. And it's like, it's kind of a running joke amongst my comments in the comment section. It just doesn't grow anymore.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. And also the thing is, if you're a new YouTuber, you're just like, I don't even know what I'm allowed to do, right? You're like, there's like, it's not like they enforce it evenly or anything like that. So it's you can't even say like, am I allowed to talk about this? Like COVID's the perfect example. You can talk about all sorts of stuff with it now, where you couldn't before, but then they still have these weird, like you can't say one of the terms that'll get you a strike right now is if you still say that the vaccine makes you magnetic.
Well, they'll demonetize videos too if you talk about the Une Earl Way order. I don't want to get your stream demonetized.
So my previous channel, The Trouble I Got, and everybody who watches the show knows, but I did an episode with a guest talking about Klaus Schwab, and then I got a defamation notice from the World Economic Forum on my channel, no strike. And then 5 days later, all they said is we won't show this episode in 5 countries in Europe. I'm like, whatever. 5 days later, I get that most bullshit strike for like, basically there was the day Ted Kaczynski died and we just talked about it on a comedy podcast. And we got that. So I'm going to open up the phone lines very shortly. There's a super chat from someone that says, do you read super chats live? No. That's a joke. Yeah. Okay. Doug Mackey, okay? So I'm sure you're familiar with Doug Mackey. As someone who's not from America, I'm here on a visa. I make all sorts of jokes. Am I going to get deported for jokes?
You know, you might, and that would be good for your career. And then hopefully we could bring you back someday, or like you could just.
But I'm going to get deported to Canada.
You could make it back to the southern border and then come in, and then you'll have full citizenship and a free ride and a free Obama
legitimately phone. Did you remember the movie Born in East LA?
No.
You remember that? It was with like Paul Rodriguez and Cheech Marin. It was from like the 80s, but it was like a dude, and he's like barely speaks English or whatever, and then he goes to Mexico for like a night of partying and loses his papers, and he's got to like sneak back into America.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You got to do it.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'll do if I get kicked out. But so do you, like, you obviously do jokes like this, like, do you? Because I don't know if people know about this. Doug Mackey, he like made some memes that were like, you know, the main meme was
he didn't even make it.
He didn't even
just reposted it.
So who did they lock up the person who made it? Did they ever find?
I don't think so. Yeah, for like, does the audience know what happened?
So if
you don't
know, if you don't know Doug Mackey, he posted memes basically saying in the last election or the 2016 election.
2016, dude. And then 5 years later they indicted him.
So 2016 election, he said, skip the polls. If you're a Hillary Clinton voter, skip the polls. You can text your vote in. And apparently 5,000 people texted that.
As a joke, just to see what would happen.
Yeah, like that's what I would do. I would just be like,
He was indicted 5 years later, like a week after the Obama administration came into power. They indicted him. Okay, he had been banned from Twitter, and that's the same joke that everybody posts. Like, at least in America, I don't know what if that's a popular thing in Canada, but like, dude, ever since social media became a thing, every year people would post that on Facebook, or like, hey, just remember, Democrats, you guys vote on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
It's a common thing, and they do it too. They're like, hey, remember, Republicans, you vote on Wednesday. It's just a dumb boomer joke, right? So, yeah, it wasn't meant to deceive. It was funny just to be like, hey, you guys are so dumb, you probably would believe this. But like, he did an interview with Tucker Carlson recently, and he said that the court subpoenaed people's phone records who texted that number. And a lot of them didn't even remember, like maybe it was, they texted, maybe that number was actually the same number as an actual text message ad that these people say, put out, oh, just text whatever, and, we'll get your coupon for whatever, right? They couldn't find a single person, and they subpoenaed people's voting records as well.
Really?
So
yeah, like not one person came forward and said, I tried to vote.
Not only did they not come forward, they couldn't find anybody. What they were trying to do to find evidence was they were trying to find people who texted the number and were like registered Democrats and didn't vote in the election, so they could use that as evidence to say, see, this registered Democrat texted in their, thought they texted in their vote and didn't go and vote. And they were trying to use that as evidence. They couldn't find anybody. Okay. So it was like no victim. And I mean, it's one thing to indict the guy. That's insane. That is communism, man. I mean, like, I'm trying not to get like too worked up about it, but like, and the fact that that wasn't a major story. Like, if they did that to a Democrat, if the Trump administration did that to a Democrat, dude, the Democrats in Congress would hold a resolution. It would be blanket coverage on all of the networks for weeks.
Oh, they drag in the million people, like the guy who, like the phone, like the whoever, CEO.
There'd be posters of him, like George Floyd. They would surround the White House. But I covered the Douglas Mackey thing as soon as he got indicted. I did a video about it, even before Tucker did, and I don't like to reveal too many things, but just to say some of Tucker's people are fans of mine. And so I don't know if they saw my video or if they just kind of heard about it. But I posted a link to his fundraiser, and then the Southern Poverty Law Center attacked me. And they're like, these people are, helping fundraise for this guy's legal expenses. And I'm like, yeah, because this is freaking ridiculous, right? So if that was a Democrat, dude, they would have put posters. They would have been marching. And on our side, it's like, who said anything about it? Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe Matt Gaetz, like two people. And then it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of old news. This dude's going to prison for 7 months.
That's crazy.
Man. 7 months in prison for posting a freaking joke. While that Asian comedian's still up, like her,
Yeah, she hasn't even, that's the crazy thing is, you think if you were her, you'd be like, okay,
Delete it!
Maybe I dodged one, but I'm gonna delete this just
because she's so bold. Yeah, she doesn't care.
But
she
I guess like
people
on her side are just feel like they're like we can't be touched. Who's gonna do this? What would you rather do if Trump wins the next election? Pardon Doug Mackey or charge her?
Both. Well, you know what? It just depends. I mean, we could have a truce and just be like, look, we're willing to kind of put an end to the lawfare. We're willing to put an end to the craziness. But if they keep it going, dude, we have to fight fire with fire. And that's, I think, what they're doing finally with Media Matters is not just is Elon suing them, but did you see there's some attorneys generals?
Yeah, we were talking about on Tim Pool last night. Missouri and Texas, I believe, are now, and Texas is trying to get him for some sort of criminal charge. So, Mark, the phone lines are open. Everybody wants to call in 1-888-949-2969. We got a first caller of the evening. Oh, they all just disappeared. What happened to them all? That's weird. They'll be back. They always come back. Oh, here we go. Okay, one moment, please, Mark. Hello. Thanks for calling Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with?
This is Andrew.
Andrew, 1 second, please. And you are on with Mark Dice. Go ahead, Andrew.
What's up, Danny? What's up, Mark? So Javier Milei just got elected in Argentina. And first, I just want to know your thoughts on that. And then second, I've seen a lot of people posting on X that he is a WEF plant, because he was listed as one of their young global leaders. Just wanted to know your thoughts.
They've listed numerous people as their, World Economic Forum leaders. That is basically a title that they bestow onto somebody without their knowledge or consent. And so Tulsi Gabbard has addressed this, where she was on that list as well. And even, I don't like the guy, but you got to defend the truth. Dan Crenshaw as well was given one of those titles. So they have nothing to say about that. Now, that's not to say that, those are the people who they're hoping to kind of like rope in. But as far as him being elected, he's a funny guy, funny in the memes, but I don't care about Argentina. I care about America. Most Americans couldn't even find Argentina on a map. Okay. I know where it is, but I don't really care what happens down there. I think maybe it's a good insight into, a potential uprising and pushing back against socialism, which might be why a lot of people are interested in it. Right. I haven't followed that story because it's not my backyard. It's not my country. So I don't really care.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll follow it from a distance. I mean, probably the worst case scenario is if he just fucks that place up so badly. Like, that's probably, you almost want nothing to maybe like a little progress. But it is a kind of, I said last night, but it is a kind of interesting thing. It's similar how X fired all, their employees and then, or whatever, 2/3, but it's like better than ever.
Yeah.
And then now all these other tech companies are probably like, yeah, like you guys better work hard because we can get rid of all of you. Most of you are useless. So
it could be a good example of, cleaning up a socialist government to kind of the populism or the republicanism kind of fighting back. But I haven't followed it. The memes are great. He seems like an interesting character. But now, can he clean up the country? That's one thing. Or are they going to just destroy him? As well? Because if he's not playing ball, and that's going to be a whole.
And they have a specific set of issues that are pretty unique to them, like the actual hyperinflation and problems like that. So,
which is coming here at some point. But
oh yeah, for sure. Anything else, there, caller?
No.
All right. Thank you for calling. All right, let's take another call here. One moment, please. Hello, thanks for calling Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with?
Hi, this is Lucas.
Lucas, one moment, please. And Lucas, you are on with Mark Dice. Go ahead, Lucas.
Hello. Hi, this is Lucas. Hello, Mark Dice and everyone.
Hey, bro.
Hey, I wanted to ask Mark Dice a question, and it's crazy to talk to you. It's awesome to talk to you because a big question I've been wanting to know is about, like, I know about Operation Mockingbird and all that, but what about like social media, about how these stars or like these kids, these young kids are following these people on like TikTok and stuff, like Big Red, I think that girl is called, is a big example. Is there like something behind that? Like how are they like getting so big, so famous and all that stuff? And then controlling the masses of kids.
YouTube used to heat, and still do. They called it heating the videos, where they would pick a star and then just boost them. Okay, so call it boosting, call it promoting, but like the internal language in YouTube was called heating. So of course, TikTok's going to do that with the most destructive people, to society. I mean, you look at the difference between American TikTok and China's TikTok, and they're having like science fair competitions, and then the viral stuff that's being promoted on American TikTok is the drag queens. And I'm not familiar with the Big Red person.
She's this rapper who just raps about her vagina a lot.
Oh yeah, anything that's going to be damaging to the culture is pretty much going to get promoted at that point, and it's so artificial too, and that's why you can see sometimes they'll shove it down people's throat. They create almost this like self-fulfilling prophecy where they boost something to make it seem as if it's popular, and then people start talking about it, and then it actually does become popular. And that's one of the things that I like about Elon, where he took away the manipulation. Remember all the manipulation of the trending list on Twitter? How like every week there would be one of those new gender bending holidays, like, oh, it's gender non-binary teacher appreciation day and all this different. It was like literally like every week. When I was writing one of my books, The Liberal Media Industrial Complex, I just started to notice like every Sunday, there's some kind of LGBTism on a Sunday, the following Sunday, for like 9 months, dude. It was just a weekly thing, and all the Black Lives Matter stuff and injecting things. So yeah, I don't know who Big Red is, but she sounds like total trash, which is why the Chinese are pushing it, and the hateful, we call them Satanists, in the media.
Yeah, I mean, they for sure. That's the thing is like if you can control how many eyeballs we'll see, like you can make a thing go viral. You just keep pushing it eventually, like unless it's total, like you always find some sort of avenue where you'll find some group of people.
There's so many stupid people out there too. I mean, like I see some of these people. I know people have different tastes in music and art, and somebody might think baseball is the dumbest sport in the world, and somebody might think motocross is boring and whatever. But like you see some of these people that have these massive followings, and I think it does reflect how dumb like the general masses are. Like that, but that is considered to be talent. Like you just got to wonder if you saw that person's video without all of the aura of this person has 10 million followers, or they were just on such and such a podcast. If you were to just happen to like see it isolated, if it would still have that appeal, or if it's just that like the halo
I mean,
effect.
if anything, like the sexy red that he's talking about, like I've seen the one video that's very popular of hers. If it had 20 views, you'd literally be dunking on it as like, look at this lunatic who is making the biggest piece of shit. But the moment that it has like a certain just like gets this gravity and popularity, and then it's assigned like a social value, I guess. It's like a social proof almost.
Exactly what it is. There was a rapper, I forget his name, and I don't know how I stumbled across his video. And it was, he's a white rapper with these dreads, and he was just absolutely awful. But his videos were so well done. And I mean, he was on a yacht with all these models, and it was this high quality production video. And it was boosted on wherever it was. And I'm clicking through, I was like, dude, this guy's music is terrible. Yeah. But the videos were absolutely incredible. And I'm like, okay, so he's obviously paying to do this, but he never had that. He never became a part of the mechanism of the music industry. And then later it turns out that his dad was like one of the most wealthy real estate developers in LA. And so then it's like, okay, that's just basically he's getting the money to do it. Now. That's what he's trying to do. But that's different than if he would have had that level of quality production, even with the terrible content. If he would have been promoted within that ecosystem, you're right, they would have got that social proof, and he would have been like the biggest thing in the world. But he never took off because for whatever reason, he just never got picked, as the new white rapper guy.
Right. I mean, I'm sure like the Island Boys, like those guys, they just, that
but they're weird. That's like a weirdness kind of thing. Like, okay.
But again, there's no staying. And generally, like, ideally, these things have no staying power, and they're more just like a sideshow. So I guess some of the stuff you have to kind of look back. All right, thanks, caller. Appreciate it. All right, let's take another call here. Okay. Hello, thanks for calling Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with? Artem. One moment, please. And you're on with Mark Dice. Go ahead, Artem.
Cool. Hey, Mark. Hey, Danny. Thanks for again everything that you guys do. Mark, question for you. I know you're a big fan of Trump, and I voted for him in 2016. But after seeing kind of what happened and like seeing just like kind of like the promises not being fulfilled, it led me to believe that it seemed that he was more of kind of like a controlled opposition. And thinking about it more, it kind of led me to think on that, even believe that more, especially thinking that if he really was kind of like an enemy of the establishment, that he would really kind of be taken care of, and like heart attack gun and that kind of stuff. And the fact that also, from my understanding, the Secret Service that protected Trump, the lead guy, was the same one as that was under Biden. And so kind of it seems it's like it's almost as if Navalny took over in Russia, but was still protected by Putin's FSB. Like it just doesn't, those things like don't make sense. No, I voted for Trump.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you swear like in
in 2016. In 2016. No, 2016. I voted for Bernie in the Florida primary, and then I saw what happened with him and voted for Trump as kind of like a chaos agent, and then realized that Bernie was basically controlled opposition the whole time. And my fear, and like the people that supported Trump are great patriots and stuff like that, and I met a lot of great people, but it just, I feel like they might be taken advantage of, similar to like Operation Trust that the Soviets did, where it's like,
okay. Were you the one that was posting about this on Twitter?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's a great question, and I understand why you would think that, but you gotta look at it from the angle that they came at him with everything that they got. Okay, from day one, even before they were calling for impeachment before he was even inaugurated, right? So there's only so much time in the day, okay? And so when they kept him on defense. They threw everything at him. So there's only so much time in the day, and all the legal stuff he's got to deal with the whole time, and the impeachment and the Mueller and this, and Democrats blocking the funding for the wall. And so, and this is kind of Ann Coulter's big thing. Like, he didn't build the wall. Well, Democrats wouldn't fund it. And then they sued him to stop the funding. And then he tried to do a workaround to get it from the military. Well, but you got to understand.
Yeah, or Jerusalem. I mean, he did everything. Not trying to make a Zionist thing out of it, but I mean, if anybody won out of his presidency, it's absolutely like the Zionist base, and that's I mean, good for them. They supported him, but it's like I mean, he had Dershowitz on his legal team. I mean, that was crazy. I thought he would make it an example of him or something, but no.
Lawyers are like tools. Okay, lawyers are tools, and he's a dangerous tool. He's a weapon, right? And so.
Yeah.
Did he fail on a lot of promises? Absolutely. But again, there's only so much time in the day, and you gotta understand too. There's two choices when it comes, especially to like a major campaign like that, right? And you got one road that leads to a cliff, and then you got another road that has a bunch of potholes and has some areas where it's flooded, and there's a bunch of snipers that are going to be sniping at you, and so it's like. Where are you gonna go?
Pick, you gotta pick one. Yeah, you gotta pick like the kind of sometimes best of the two, because you're like, it's not like some other candidate is like, oh, you didn't vote for the candidate who happened to be the first guy ever to keep all his promises. Like,
do you want to eat a pile of dog poop for lunch, or if you were starving in the middle of nowhere, are you gonna go and eat that kind of 3-day-old pizza out of the dumpster? Like, those are your choices.
It's just
they're not.
Neither one of them is going to be ideal. Aren't misleading people. But in general, though, I think he's red-pilled more people than if he wasn't there. So I think in general, I mean, it's been a positive on society. I think more people are waking up to.
He has reinvigorated patriotism, and my big thing is localism, especially like on a national level, dude. Like, this country may be toast, regardless of what happens in the election next year. This country's in big trouble. But, and I do, not to like show the book, but the final chapter of my book has solutions where, and I know from going to city council meetings and kind of borrowing from Alex Stein's style a little bit and trolling these meetings, like, dude, you could take over city councils, you could take over school boards, you can elect sheriffs. Okay, during COVID, even in California, in Los Angeles counties, dude, there were sheriffs who wouldn't enforce Governor Newsom's lockdowns. Okay, so if you can vote local people in, and it's a lot easier, and they're you tend to know them a little bit better. You're in the same community. You go to the same groups. Your kids go to school with them, and whatever with their kids. It's easier to fix something on a local level than it is on a national level. And like, dude, this country's a sinking ship on the national level with the debt and this and that. And you can nitpick all the stuff that Trump, tried to do, didn't do. But again, man, like there's only so many hours in the day. And when, they're coming at you with everything that they got. And as far as him, like, was he controlled opposition as a fake dude, they're destroyed. His life is going to be destroyed. I mean, it's a miracle that his wife hasn't left him at this point.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe, the controlled opposition, only because like if he dropped one red pill that and did nothing else, the fact that he like woke people up to the fact that the media is just like so full of shit across the board, because there was probably like he probably knocked 20 points off trusted media like easily.
Yeah, and everybody sees too how corrupted it is. And the deep state, the fake news industrial complex. I mean, I understand the criticisms, and it's going to be interesting with the DeSantis crew, because not that they don't have some valid criticisms of him, but it's going to be tough to kind of walk a lot of that back if they paint themselves into a corner. And then if Trump wins the nomination, and if he doesn't, take a plea deal and drop out, if he goes for the goal, are these DeSantis people going to then kind of swallow their pride and just kind of brush off all those things that they said? It's going to be tough. So we're in for a rough ride.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. All right, we're going to take another caller. 1 second. Hello. Thanks for calling Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, my name's Tyler.
Tyler, 1 second. All right, Tyler, you're on with Mark Dice. Go ahead.
Hey, Mark. First, I want to say I bought your book, and I definitely have been enjoying reading it. And I'm kind of just a young kid living in Minnesota. I'm 20, and I feel like I really can't do much, like obviously on a national level right now to help fix the country. But I was kind of wondering what you thought about something I could do more local to kind of help this movement.
Well, you are pretty young to even get on school board, but probably the best thing that you could do as a young person is to just not get sucked into that machinery and have it destroy your life, by going deeper into debt, by buying crap that you don't need, by becoming self-destructive, by being a brainwashed moron. You have a tremendous opportunity, because if you have the skills and the knowledge and the, like the trust and the respectability, you could excel in whatever field you want to go in, because the competition is a bunch of morons. Like the masses are just so stupid. They don't want to work. They think that everything's going to be given to them. Everybody thinks they want to be a TikTok star or whatever. So like, it doesn't matter if you're like a plumber or a machinist or a dentist, whatever, a dentist. Like, if you can develop the skills and are a hard worker like Americans used to all be and aspire to, you're going to outshine. And I would say this too, like as a young person, just be careful posting on social media, because that's going to limit your career options. It's like if you're on Twitter and stuff like that, I would use a pseudonym. I would never post your picture. I would private, only allow your friends to access your, I don't know, you might be too young to even use Facebook, but your Snapchat, like you got to be careful and pick your battles, because
unless you're trying to be a public figure specifically, there's like really no benefit to posting.
It's like the joke is like, get fired in 10 years, join Twitter.
Yeah.
Because they'll go and find your stuff. It's just you got to be really, really careful, and you got to choose your battles, man. Like, you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face, right? So you can impact friends, family, local communities. You don't need to be not everybody needs to be out there, spewing their opinions on YouTube.
I mean, like literally, we're at a point where you could be walking by a burning house and see like a family burning inside, and you decide to help them and become a hero in the news, and some person is going to go search your name on Twitter to see if you said something racist, just because you were just like, they saw you, and some person's just like, hey, I wonder if this hero is racist or something, or whatever, like very low, little to gain from it. For sure.
Actually, I think that actually did happen.
Probably.
I really, there is like I can't think of it, but something like that did happen where somebody did something really good, and they went and dug up.
And they go like, because whatever. So for whatever reason, like journalists don't want to do any journalism until like something like that happens, and they go like, oh, let's go dig up everything on this person. You're like, why?
And I'm not saying that like to give into the fear or just keep your mouth shut. But like, you got to be really, really careful, man, because in today's society, you know, some kids singing along to a rap song and saying the lyrics that contain a little word that hurts a lot of Black people's feelings, you know, that goes viral on Snapchat, that gets saved, it goes to Twitter. And this is a real case where some kids were just singing along to a rap song on Snapchat and somebody saved it. And it happened to be some kids from like Calabasas, like a really high-end high school where all this, like the Kardashians and stuff live. And like some former baseball player, maybe it was Darryl Strawberry, like, you know, tweeted, he's like, "This happened at my daughter's school. I just can't believe it." I'm like, really? Just can't believe some kids singing along to a rap song, huh? Yeah. And it's like, it's a national story because some teenagers, you know, are singing along to a rap song, and like, hopefully they didn't get their names doxxed, but like, dude, people at their school know who they are. They see them on the news. Like, it's just tough, man. I mean, like when I was a kid, you could probably, maybe it was just my school, but like, you could scream, you know, the N-word running through the halls in between classes, and like nobody would care. I mean, you wouldn't get a detention. I literally can't think of anybody who got a detention for like using a gay slur, like in the hall or during lunch or whatever. You know, it could be different if you're talking in class, but I mean, that's how much stuff has changed. I mean, like, remember Kyle Cashew, one of the kids from the Parkland school?
He was actually, I was doing a stand-up in the West Village, and he was like in the audience, and I was talking to him after randomly, yeah.
I mean, he was one of the kids kind of opposed David Hogg and all these, you know.
He just was like a pro-gun. He was at a school shooting, and he's like, I'm pro-guns.
But he got his offer to, I think, Yale or Harvard rescinded. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Because on some private, you know, group document or Google Docs or something, like he was calling some of the jocks the N-word when he was like 15 years old. And then like, you know, 3 years later or something, they come out. And then he literally gets rescinded from Harvard. And then these are the same cowards who, you know, come like I think the president came out and was defending some of the like kind of the pro-jihad chanting, and they're like, "Well, this is we support free speech at our school." Well, not for white people.
Right, of course. All right, thanks, caller. Good luck with all that.
Thank you.
All right, let's take another call here. This guy's been trying all night. Hello, thanks for calling Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with? Yes, I can hear you. And all right, you're on with Mark Dice. Go ahead.
I'm on with Mark, the Dice Man. Dice?
What's up, dude?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm here.
How you doing?
Good. How are you, man?
But first off, good. First off, before I go to Mark, I figured out what's going on at my shop while I'm seeing things in the windows.
Okay.
So I have an extension auxiliary cord thing. It has an input and an output that I hang it on my passenger handle.
All right.
And
I don't think the story you told me. I don't know. Do you have a question for Mark? I don't even know.
And then what? You're seeing a noose? You're seeing a noose?
Oh, I
saw some nooses at the grocery store.
Yeah,
I saw some nooses at the grocery store. There were dog leashes. And then I literally took a picture of it and tweeted it to the grocery store. And I was like, "Why are these, nooses in your store?" And they responded to me. And
you
like,
probably gave him a panic attack.
Please, what store is that? And then they later realized that I was trolling them, and then they deleted it. But this is right after the Jesse, the Jesse Small. This is after the Bubba Wallace,
the race.
Bubba Wallace, garage pole.
But I'm that JJ from Levittown where I give you that.
I don't remember the story. I remember last week you called in and you were wasted. That I do remember. But anyways, we got lots of people calling. You got a question for Mark?
Yeah, fuck it. So Mark, it's crazy how you're like the Adderall, like OD Megan Murphy version of a male. Like you go hard, bro.
Are you an Adderall guy?
No, but I
no, he's not an Adderall guy. I'm just like amping up Megan Murphy.
Oh, okay.
Like
Megan Murphy?
Like he's great.
Megan Murphy.
She was she got kicked off. She was like basically the OG person who got kicked off of Twitter for saying that men aren't women.
Oh no. Okay, so I did hear about that, but I'm not familiar with her. No, sorry. Yeah. And that just kind of speaks to the fractured ecosystem that we're in. It's where people can have like even a large audience, kind of within their niche.
Yeah.
But then they might not be a national figure outside of that. So
Right.
I try, man. I gotta be a little careful. That's part of the reason I don't like doing live interviews. I like Danny. That's why I was like, I'll come on the show. I'll try to lighten up a little bit, but I can't articulate what it is that I'm trying to say. And I'd rather just like, let me just polish it up. And what if I do say, not that certain words would slip out. I try to.
I mean, this show is called Low Value Mail for a reason. This is I don't have a call screener. We have a good time. It's very low.
That is a dangerous. This is a dangerous format.
I mean, I'll tell you, we're 86 episodes in, and there hasn't been an issue yet. So, anyways, do you have a question, caller?
I just wanted to say, like, Mark, it's hilarious how, like, you speak the truth of reality and how South Park imitates what the fuck is going on. And that whole first, like, 6 minutes you were on that rant was fucking hilarious. You were talking about, like, trainees reading to children and shit. Like, I was fucking dying over here.
All right, thanks.
South Park, I don't know how they survive. They're one of the outliers that somehow haven't been canceled yet.
It's so funny because they're an outlier / they're not, because they're probably one of the last few things that actually makes money for these networks. Like they're actually, because like I've always talked about, like with Ryan, where when all of this like diversity stuff was happening, and just maybe to make myself feel better, I'm like, at some point these companies are gonna have to go back to making money because they're businesses. And like at some point, they're gonna have to, right? They're gonna have to be like, all this stuff that doesn't make any money, we have to stop doing. Like we're losing money.
Well, and part of the reason why they're doing this is, and I covered this in my last book, Hollywood Propaganda: How TV, Movies, and Music Shape Our Culture. And I kind of get a little obsessive about how certain people in the mainstream conservative movement just still don't get it. Like they're not talking about Operation Mockingbird. They're talking about the deep state, but they don't talk about the Bilderberg Group or anything like that. They want to touch on Skull and Bones, a little too conspiratorial for them, even though Operation Mockingbird is, about as, documented as anything. But like in that book, there are literally agencies in Hollywood that people go to and then hire as lobbyists. Okay. And then they lobby the writers and the producers of the studios to then insert messages into shows. So like if you're some, organization that has a message that you want to put out, whatever it is, you go to one of these agencies. Proper Daily is one of them, which was started by like a Hillary Clinton associate who was with like the Clinton Foundation. And they literally will just take your money, and then they have all the connections in Hollywood, and then they'll lobby the writers and the studios and be like, hey, this would be a great idea. And then they present them with talking points and story ideas, just like lobbyists in Washington, D.C., groups pay them to go and lobby members of Congress to introduce bills.
Yeah.
Groups pay these Hollywood agencies. They're called social impact agencies.
I mean, it's basically social engineering.
Yeah, to literally go and push their propaganda. So it's just, there's a mechanism behind the scenes that has been kind of like pulling the strings. So like these studios aren't just coming up with these ideas on their own. Now they almost are, because it's snowballed into a point where like, oh, this is the cool new thing. Like, oh, we gotta make sure we have a Latino and an Asian and a fat character, and an Arab and a gay character.
Every single thing.
But before that, like what really I think started this was those agencies, and they just kept pushing and pushing. And like Proper Daily had a dinner with like hundreds of like the biggest writers and studio heads, and they're all just like, then they just promote their agenda, and it's almost like the Bilderberg Group of Hollywood, where then they get together and just kind of set what they want to be the agenda. And then all the big heads of the studios and the writers are all there. And then they're like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to be doing now. Sounds good.
Yeah. Is there any indication that, because Mockingbird was what, in the 70s when it started?
Well, it started in the 50s, actually.
Started in the 50s. Okay. Do they like, I mean, it seems to think that there's like, do you know for a fact that it's over, or do you know for a fact that it still continues in some sort of different form?
Nobody's going to admit that. But I mean, like anything that,
but like maybe
the evidence is clear as day. I mean, it's obvious as day, but nobody's going to admit it like they did back then. And even after the hearings, the church hearings, when they admitted it, and the whole report talks about how much money they were paying, like adjusted for inflation, it was like a quarter $250 million a year in today's dollars that they're paying under the table for editors. Dude, they would have the heads of the studios and the anchors and reporters sign NDAs. Okay, so like if the CIA is going to approach somebody and be like, hey, we want you to talk about these things, and, you know, even maybe back then they would argue that it was for good. It was just to fight communism, right? But it's still, they're giving the reporters classified information and say, hey, talk about this, don't talk about this. They literally would have them sign NDAs, right? So then they would have them sign an NDA, and this is all in the Church Committee report. They would have them sign an NDA before they would even tell them anything. It's like, hey, we want to talk to you about something important. Sign this NDA, and then they tell you what it is that they want to tell you, and then they bring you on board. So, and I had somebody like, it turned out to be Starbucks. I figured out who it was. They approached me. This is like years ago. Some law firm approached me, or advertising agency, and they're like, "Hey, we have a big client, you know, that wants to, you know, use one of your videos in an ad, but we need you to sign this NDA to tell you about it, right?"
Yeah,
and I'm like,
right, yeah. They just even get the ball rolling and all.
Yeah,
like
I'm like, no, I'm just not going to do it. And then it turns out it was Starbucks, because they tried to kind of mock the war on Christmas. So they wanted to just take like a little soundbite from one of my videos and then include it in their ad about everybody like complaining about their cups not be having Christmassy stuff on them. But like, do you imagine that the CIA doing that? So like anybody who's even associated with it's not going to admit that's what they're doing. Right. So, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that after they're caught doing something that, oh, sorry, we just won't do that anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
We'll just be way better about doing it. All right, we're gonna.
Well, that's actually what the former head of CBS, I think it was William Paley, might have said. Like, he was interviewed after the hearings, and somebody asked him back in like the mid '70s. They're like, "Hey, do you think that this still goes on?" And this is like literally the former head of CBS at the time, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sure that it does." You know, he was I guess he was former head at that time, and he's like,
Right.
"I'm sure that it does, but they have to be a lot more circumspect about it." So,
yeah, and I mean,
to get somebody on the record about it is going to be virtually impossible. But to say that it doesn't happen still today, I think is just idiotic.
And that's at a time when there was like what, 6 TV channels or something.
4,
so you're like,
3.
or whatever.
Yeah,
4, 3, and like handful of newspapers.
It's a magazine.
Like,
yeah,
like you could really, with very minimal effort at that point, probably like really dictate what people thought. All right, we got a caller here. One moment, please. Hello, thanks for calling Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with?
Yeah, I'm just Sesky Globalist. I had a question for Mark.
Mr. Globalist. All right, you're on with Mark Dice. Go ahead.
Hey, Mark. I'm a kid of I grew up watching the TV, 9/11, invasion of Iraq, and everything. So I've been conditioned by American media to despise and hold a hatred for the Islamists and those type of people in that region of the world. And now, I did the devil thing of signing up for Instagram, and I get a lot of hilarious, though very racially suggestive, content. Will there be a time where if I'm I can blame these corporations for feeding me this hate fuel?
Like you want to do a class action? You want to join a class action lawsuit kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I don't believe I'm inherently a bad person.
Nobody does.
Are humans? I mean, are humans inherently racist? Yes. I mean, that's
sure.
just
Tribal, I would
undeniable.
say.
Yeah, tribal. Yeah.
Yeah,
but,
inherently tribal, because it's an ancient survival mechanism. It's like one group against another group. They've even done experiments in psychology experiments where they would pick random groups arbitrarily, like in school, and they would pick a group of kids and put them in one group and just call them a random name. Group A, give them some random name. Group B, and people always have an inherent in-group preference. It's just the survival mechanism.
Well, yeah, I mean that's just biology, because that's just a biology thing. It's they don't look like me, they don't sound like me.
It's a path of least resistance
like
to a degree where you're it's someone who's just maybe I'm not that different, but as someone who's Jewish, when you're I went from a Jewish school to nobody was Jewish, and you're for me to just have to explain all this shit every single time to every single person, you're just I'd rather not have to all the time, and probably everybody's groups is similar.
I think knowing personally knowing people, like coworkers, friends, acquaintances, classmates, things like that. I think that's probably like the best way to kind of dispel. Not that there's not, certain truths to certain stereotypes, but I mean, I know, I worked with a couple Muslims at a day job, 15 years ago, and just from working side by side with them, with one particular, like that was where I learned. I was like, oh wow, you mean like Muslims believe in the virgin birth of Jesus? Like Muslims believe that Jesus was a prophet? Like I had no idea, because like you're never going to hear that on Fox News or anything. It's just Muslims bad, Middle East bad. But it was fascinating. Of course, some of the Muslims think that Christians are idol worshipers, but then you'll have the ones who are kind of more moderate. It's not like they're going to, in America at least, like stone you to death for you're an idol worshiper. But I mean, like, that changed my view of just literally like knowing one. I was like, wow, like really? Like you guys actually see Jesus as like a prophet? Like I never heard that from anybody anywhere. And maybe I heard it in like a comparative religions class like years earlier, but it just didn't like stick because it was pre 9/11. So like it didn't have that much significance. Like, oh, whatever, Islam, that's that Arab, religion over there.
Right. And then post 9/11, every TV show was the bad guy. It was like, just to think of like the show like 24. Like if you remember the show 24, is like they're just
dude, they normalized torturing suspects. Okay, like literally that show helped to normalize torture, and even like Vanity Fair, like the big Hollywood industry publication, like admitted that. They're like later they say, 24 carried the water for torture in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, I think it was more of a thing of like most Americans stateside before 9/11, like they didn't have too much of like an understanding of who like the Islamists in the Arab world was, outside of like everything on television or anything they learned in class. But once 9/11 happened, then 2003 in Iraq, they're like putting out this image, and then all of a sudden in the world learn like, dude, you got to tread lightly, because dude, you can draw a smiley face and then right underneath it write Prophet Muhammad, and these people will literally declare global jihad on you.
Well, when you say these people, you should be a little more specific about that. But like many people in America are still so dumb that they don't know the difference between a Sikh and a Muslim. They just see some like brown skinned person wearing a turban, and they're like, "That's a Muslim." It's like, no, that's an Indian Sikh. Totally different ethnicities, totally different religions.
I wonder the level of like the Mockingbird stuff with like, because you think for the American War Machine in the early 2000s, like they would have, I don't know if they would have been like overt about it, but they might have been like, hey, like we could use some shows about we're the kind of the good guys, and like,
dude, there's a whole there's a whole department. And this is like not even disputed, bro. There's a whole department within the Department of Defense called the Entertainment Liaison Office. They have a website. Okay,
really?
Department of Defense has one. Yeah, you can go look it up. CIA has one. If you just Google like CIA,
is that just to like get stuff accurate, like when you're?
No, that is to literally like if you're a producer, you go to them and then say, hey, we want to make this movie, and we want to use like an aircraft carrier. Can we borrow your aircraft carrier? And then in order to do that, they have script approval. So it's like, because they're not going to allow tanks and access to military bases and stuff like that for movies and shows that undermine, the American agenda. So like, it is a weird coupling where you have the Hollywood, which are supposedly like anti-war, but then you have them working hand in hand with the Entertainment Liaison Office to kind of make, American Empire propaganda, where movies like Platoon from Oliver Stone, which is kind of shows a lot of the horrors of war.
Yeah.
They're not going to get on board with that kind of stuff. Or even like Katy Perry made a music video once where she got dumped by her boyfriend and she went to join the Marines. And they like literally shot it on Camp Pendleton, actual Marine base, dude. They had Marines as extras in the video because it's this like girl power, she's joining the Marines type of thing. So like to get access to that kind of equipment, like you have to have access to the government. And so in order to do that, they have their entertainment liaison offices, and that's literally what they're called, which is basically like the Operation Mockingbird of entertainment.
Yeah, interesting. I have a question. I'm sure we have some calls coming in very shortly, but actually, you know what? I'll take this one. I'll hold the question for another moment. Okay, 1 second, please. Hello, next call, low value mail. Who am I speaking with?
Yo, what's up, guys? Sorry,
Hey, what's up? One sec. All right, you're on with Mark Dice. Go ahead.
Yo, Mark and Mark, what's up, dude?
How you doing? Welcome to the show.
You're not from San Diego, but I know you live in San Diego, right?
I've been here for many, many years. Yes.
Yeah, so you're a fake San Diegan. It doesn't matter how long you've been here.
Are you from San Diego?
Well, there's a thing with native Californians.
Yeah, dude, born and raised, bro.
In SoCal?
I live in Coronado.
Okay. Yeah, there's a thing for the audience who don't know. There's like a locals only type of thing where, if you're not born in San Diego.
It's the tribalism that you were literally
dude,
just talking about.
I'll cut your fucking leash at the surf spot, bro. I'll cut your leash, dude.
Yeah. That's how territorial they get. They don't like you surfing at their spots. So it's
like, unless
it's
you're
very,
from there, or do they,
dude, if you're at Trestles on a Sunday morning, I'm gonna fuck you up.
Well, that's like New York is like if you ever like just even say that you're a New Yorker and you haven't lived here since like 9/11, basically, you'll get just people just shit on you.
Yeah. No, I have my honorary San Diegan card though, but I'll stay away from your reefs.
What's up,
no, dude. Danny had a good point though. I lived in New York for like 8 months over in Fort Greene in Brooklyn.
Yep.
And every time I brought up 9/11, it was like, you weren't here? Shut the fuck up, dude.
Yeah,
you fucking dumbass.
Yeah, they don't want to know. Anyways, what's your question for Mark?
Mark, I'm not sure. I know you're into conspiracies. I'm not totally sure what you're like super into or anything like that. But I was friends with Nathan Thompson. He's a big flat earther. And I don't know if you know him. He was the dude that was bouncing the weights on his hammer in the Netflix documentary.
No, I didn't see it. Was he the guy who like basically debunked flat Earth by cutting the hole in the cardboard cutout?
Oh, they did like at night, and they go, you can kind of.
Is that I haven't followed the flat Earth stuff because it's just, no offense, just a little bit too ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
It's insane to me too. I'm like, bro, what are we talking about? But it was like he was legitimately like my friend before all this, and then he took too much acid at a party that we were all at, me and all my homies.
Well, that explains it.
Yeah. And they ended up diving down into this deep hole, and I just think it's, I think it's kind of funny also, but
it is
it's
an
also
interesting
kind of
phenomena. Like there probably are like sociological studies about like why people believe that in today's day and age, and it's probably just like a symptom of the severe skepticism.
It's for sure the distrust of everything. It's I mean, you see it right now, like just every.
It's like they're ultra contrarians. Like no matter what somebody says, it must be the exact opposite, and then they start piecing things together that. It's almost like maybe some of it's like kind of a half truth where it appears to be like it makes sense, but then if you really look at it, then you're like, okay, it's just a weird phenomenon, man. But also too, like I think do they censor flat Earth stuff on YouTube now?
No. So I've had on this show actually this guy Dave Weiss. His name's Flat Earth Dave. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was on earlier this year, and he has this whole presentation, and it's the funniest thing. I'm not like a flat earther or even remotely in that realm, but he has this whole thing, and whenever like you find a little hole, because the thing is the holes in flat Earth, they're not just like makes you think. You go, this debunks the whole thing, right? You're like this one thing debunks everything.
Yeah, you're telling me that in the 21st century, no pilot has ever just like went over the supposed edge. Like, there's just so many things. It's so weird that I never spent the time to look at it because I'm like, okay, dude, the Bilderberg group is weird enough. Bohemian Grove is weird enough.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and we got plenty of evidence for that. And even though there's, you know, some, I would say kind of theories, not, you know, I don't even want to call them conspiracy theories about it. And there's some evidence for like some terrible, weird stuff, like back in the 70s with like, I don't know how far you went down that rabbit hole, Danny, with like Hunter S. Thompson and, you know, Paul Bonacci, like bringing his lawyer to the entrance. And like, there's just like crazy stuff.
Weird stuff, huh?
Even that aside, it's like, okay, not only is it just, you can't just write it off as a campground for the elite, because Peter Phillips, a guy, you know, like a college professor up in Sonoma County, got his PhD dissertation on the Bohemian Grove, and he was let in there by like one of the members and interviewed people and did a whole dissertation about it. And like, it is like, he admits, all the members admit that it's a consensus building place. You know, it's like the guys going golfing and having a, you know, meeting on the greens. It's sort of like, okay, they're letting loose, they're having some drinks, they're doing their weird mock human sacrifice ritual to kick it off. And then it is like, and when you start looking into like the different camps, because it's not just like one giant thing, there's different groups and different industries.
Like, how long did they go for?
It's 2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks once a year?
2 weeks from like, yeah, every like the second Saturday of July for two weekends, basically.
And so what occurs there for the other 50 weeks a year?
You know, I think it's like a place that you can rent it out to be, I think, for weddings and stuff like that. And they might not even do much at all.
That would be like the ultimate, like, I wonder if they're allowed to like kind of bill it as like the ultimate conspiracy theorist, like dream.
Come and take a tour. Come and take a tour. I want to go. I don't know if they still even like have maintained it, but Skull and Bones has an island where they used to have it as like a family resort for Skull and Bones members and things. And it was kind of depicted a little bit in the Matt Damon movie where he joined like the CIA. I can't remember what it is, but The Good Shepherd. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they depicted it a little bit in there. But, you know, when we got real, I don't want to say conspiracies, but, you know, like these elitist think tanks, and even if you're not even going to call it a conspiracy, I think to understand like how the world works and how power works, you have to understand, or at least acknowledge, that those are the groups that are making the decisions and building the consensus. And even if people are going to argue that the Bilderberg group doesn't make policy, you know, it's just a discussion forum, it still is where the elite come to a consensus. And then if you've seen some of the leaks that have come out of there, not so much since Jim Tucker has died. I don't know how well you follow. I know you're kind of a conspiracy
I'm
aficionado.
Yeah.
So like ever since Jim Tucker died,
is that who went with Alex Jones? Is like who did Alex Jones go with to? Or you're talking about Skull and Bones, not because didn't Alex Jones?
Alex went into Bohemian Grove.
The Bohemian Grove, yeah. Who did he go with?
He went with his producer Mike Hansen at the time.
Oh, gotcha.
And then John Ronson, this guy,
John Ronson,
John Ronson didn't go in. John Ronson was afraid to go in because he was working on a documentary for the BBC, or the BBC or Channel One or some like one of those, broadcast show over there, right? So he didn't go in. I don't know if he was too afraid or for the liabilities and stuff like that. So they just basically had Alex go in, and with his producer Mike at the time, and took the footage and then used it. And then even he kind of laughed it off and said, "Oh, this is just nothing. It's just a bunch of guys blowing off steam." And even if you're going to say, okay, you got to admit it is weird, man. I mean, it's
super weird. Yeah,
it's bizarre. And there was an employee who worked there a couple of years later after Alex went in. Alex went in 2000, and then like 2004 or 2005, there was a worker, an Alex Jones listener, who got a job there specifically to investigate it. And I met him actually. And like, I saw the photos on his phone and everything. Like, he gave me a program guide that he obtained from within there, a membership list, like the 2005 membership list. I'm like, dude, he took photos of the cremation of care, I think like the night after. I mean, there's no doubt, dude. It is a metal skeleton that is like welded together and then just covered with newspaper or paper. So like, it's not just like a bonfire in front of the Moloch owl statue. Like, it is literally a human-size skeleton, metal skeleton covered with paper. So that's weird.
And some of the most powerful people in the world. That's obviously like the other. I mean,
and they also,
Yeah, go ahead.
Like Peter Phillips also admits in his dissertation. I wrote a whole book, by the way, Bohemian Grove's Facts and Fiction. If anybody wants to check it out, he admits in his dissertation that like the atomic bomb was basically birthed in the Bohemian Grove. Okay, like they got all the officials, and that's where they met. That's where they came, like had their meetings. They gave birth to the United Nations. So like you can't say that it's just like a vacation spot for these wealthy people. It's not like a Martha's Vineyard or, you know, the Hamptons for political people. Like they are coming to a consensus. And even some insiders, something Rothkopf, you know, who was like a Henry Kissinger's financial money manager for a while, wrote a book called Superclass. And like he admits it as well. Because like half the people, you know, who they're not going to read their books, but they're just kind of like, yeah, so what? You know, we come to consensus. And it almost is like a natural formation of power. Because like if you know how power works and how people get together and how politics functions, you know, politics is about power and trying to have like a civilized way to
and keeping it. That's like the thing. I think that's what a lot of people discount too much is the extent at which people will go to keep power they have. Like when people go, why won't Joe Biden just be happy with his one term and you're like, because he's the most powerful man on earth, like arguably.
Well, Henry Kissinger said it was...
What dictator has ever in the history of anything just been like, that was a good run, but I'm done. There's a better man for the job. Like,
or like Freeway Ricky Ross, you know, you would think that after he made $10 million running coke, like he would have been like, all right, that's enough. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. It's just an addiction. And I think it was Henry Kissinger said that power is the greatest aphrodisiac. And so, you know, he's sort of like adjacent to power, you know, I mean, like he was Secretary of State back, you know, 30 years ago or whatever, but not like he was a governor or anything like that. But he knows just from rubbing elbows and sort of, you know, being a power broker himself behind the scenes, even if he's not, you know, the face of an organization, like it's got to be so addicting. And same thing, like, you know, why didn't Tom Brady retire while he was ahead? Or, you know, why did you know, any professional sports guy not quit when they're starting to be like, oh, you're getting a little bit too old, man. Like maybe you should kind of step out, but they just need that. They need that addiction. That's part of their identity.
I mean, you ever had a friend who just has like, you know, gets you VIP for something and you're just like, I mean, just think about how that feels and then multiply that by God knows how many magnitudes. All right, we got another call here. One moment, please. Hello. Thanks for calling Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with?
Oh, this is James from Texas. Good evening, gentlemen.
James from Texas. One moment, please. All right, James, you're on with Mark Dice. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I just had a quick question, and not to incite any what so-called hatred today, because you can find hatred even under a rock, according to some.
This guy sounds like Henry Kissinger, by the way.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. Are you aware of the protocols of the elders of Zion? I'm just kind of inciting research, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly aware of it.
Yeah, that is a widely debunked document. To kind of, you know, some people say, oh, there's a little bit of, they'll find some parallels in there with certain things that actually supposedly happened, but like that is a widely debunked document. Like there's no real scholars who are going to say that that's, you know, a legitimate document.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's been ever like, obviously it was used like, you know, for purposes to say it was true or whatever, but
what that was is basically like the
hey, sorry, caller, can you just turn down your speakers in the back? We can just kind of hear you picking up some feedback.
That was basically like the writings of Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati, which, you know, was a real organization, and the writings were found. And it sounds, you know, like stuff of science fiction, but like they did find Adam Weishaupt's writings and his correspondence, and, you know, they were published back at the time. They were published in a book called Proofs of a Conspiracy by a guy named John Robeson, which was sent to George Washington, who acknowledged that like the Illuminati exists and was, you know, operating within the United States, and that they had infiltrated Masonic lodges and all this different stuff. So like the protocols are basically kind of like inspired from that, and then tried to paint probably to demonize the Jews or to demonize maybe the Zionists at the time. But like, dude, yeah, nobody serious takes the protocols as being like a
well,
real
no, I totally get the point, and that's why I'm asking. I absolutely would not like to push anything on anyone, because the problem I'm finding here with a lot of conspiracies, according to ADL and SPLC, for example, the story of Leo Frank until lately was a conspiracy theory that he was lynched by the white supremacists, which comes out it was not exactly the white supremacists, but it was kind of just people that cared for the little 13-year-old Mary Fagan. And that's the whole problem. I know they throw the rock and hide the hand, and I'm not talking about the so-called Jews. That we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, the ADL and the SPLC,
I understand the whole thing.
You know, they've lost, and it's funny because right now, especially the ADL, is they're crying about the fact that, you know, they basically destroyed their credibility for the last however many years, and now they're kind of like I mean, I was laughing at Jonathan Greenblatt where he was like, "We're like, what's going on?" He's like, "We're these people that are safe spaces.
Stop the woke Olympics," he said. And
yeah,
he's tired of hearing about safe
Olympics.
spaces. He literally said that.
I couldn't believe those words were coming out of his mouth. The oppression Olympics, and then he goes, "What the hell?" I'm like, he's like, "We're on the bottom." And I wanted him to say, like, literally, go, "What the hell? We're like on this, like, the pyramid or whatever of oppression." He's like, "We're on the bottom with the white people," is like essentially what he was saying. And you're like, yeah, because you're reaping what you sowed.
This is the monster you created, Frankenstein, man, and it came back. And you know, it's sad because, I mean, there is real anti-Semitism. There is still some real racism, but like when they start. They're a boy who cries wolf, and then it's just nobody's going to actually believe anything that they say when it's like, I mean, you know, wishing somebody Merry Christmas. The ADL has a slideshow presentation that they put together geared for teachers where they're complaining about Arts and Crafts Day in public schools because the kids are doing Santa Claus, which is common, you know, in every public school in America, you know, in like grade school, you know, you make your little Santa Claus ornament or whatever. And they're like, well, you know, the courts have ruled that Santa Claus is not a religious symbol, but it's still problematic nonetheless. And it's like, okay, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I did this ADL video where I pretended like I worked for the ADL. That was when like the ban the ADL hashtag was going on. And then I was going through all the numbers that are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there's like, I can't remember what it was, but it was something like 19 numbers or something. Like there's so many numbers, more than that. It was,
and then it becomes like the okay hand sign where people do it as a joke, and then now they take it seriously. And then we have instances like the guy who worked for a gas and electric utility in Southern California was fired from his job. Do you see this one, Danny? You guys, like there was a guy who worked for the San Diego Gas and Electric Company, a Mexican guy who was cracking his knuckles at a stoplight, and somebody at a Black Lives Matter march took a photo of him and tweeted it to SDG&E and said, like, this guy flashed the white supremacist hand sign at our Black Lives Matter. He was fired.
Yeah.
And he is Mexican. A Mexican guy flashing a white supremacist hand sign. It just doesn't make any sense. And the sad thing is, like, he wasn't in the union yet because I think they had like a 6-month thing. So like the union could either couldn't protect him or didn't protect him, because later I started looking into it and I talked to some people who were working there, and I was like, dude, don't you guys have a union? Like, you're a government, basic facility. How did the union let that happen? And they said that he wasn't in the union because he wasn't past maybe it was even 90 days or something like that.
Yeah,
but like,
he just was still in that.
How are you so insane? And you've seen him with like the circle game, people making the okay stuff.
Remember the Cubs game?
Yeah, they banned the guy for life from the stadium.
Banned the guy for like a Cubs fan for life because he was like doing it whatever. Like during, there's actually the funniest thing. I didn't notice this until very recently, but in Canada, in Toronto, there's a furniture company called Bad Boys, and it's the former mayor of Toronto is the owner of it, Mel Lastman. He was like, he owned this furniture, whatever, and then they just went bankrupt. But literally all their photos is him and his whole family, and they're all doing this. But theirs is like the A-OK. They're all Jewish, and they're like, it's just like, no, they go, nobody's better than Bad Boy. And then like someone posted, and they're like, why are they all doing the white supremacists?
Well, we can't forget the reason it came about is because that's kind of one of Trump's nonverbal quirks. You know, we all kind of have those weird nonverbal quirks when you're talking, and he was just doing that, and it kind of became like the MAGA hand sign. And
but it was like I think it was just like started as a 4chan thing. I think 4chan was just like they go like this is like a W and a P, and then they're like let's do, and then it is amazing though how like. Because people have joked about, especially now with the Israel war and like just like a lot of like the anti-Semitic tropes and stuff, and a lot of people are like, it's so crazy. You'll see like pretty normie people just like reciting like all the lists of Jews and stuff. They're like all the like the 4chan stuff that was like really in the fringes is kind of like bubbling up, where like normal kind of people.
Well, it's always been one of those topics that's a very it's a minefield, you know. And I think what happened, I don't even want to get into it. That's what I want my career to continue.
You have a pass. I'm Jewish, you got a pass.
But you know, like Candace Owens, I'll just say this, Candace Owens kind of made some comments about Nikki Haley, she endorsed her for president of Israel, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Candace Owens should be fired. Like, this is terrible. And then, Ben Shapiro denounced her and said that she's terrible just because she's sad about, a lot of the Gazan children being killed. And it's like
very reasonable.
You're not allowed to say that you're sad about, like, I'm sad about anybody. I don't want to see it. It's just a horrible situation all the way around. And just the fact that there were so many calls for her to be fired.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Jeremy Boring had to come out and be like, we're not going to fire her. It's like, dude, that is weird when like you have to come and issue a statement and be like, we're not going to fire her for saying what is, basically a comment of like that half of the Americans.
Probably half of the people in the country.
It's not even remotely controversial. It's just something that anybody would say.
How crazy is it that Michael Rappaport is like, like literally he's like, you know what, might be time to vote for Trump. You're like, that's all right, boy.
Well, I don't know how political you want to get, but with the election next year, I mean, it's like, dude, if you can look past people, past President Trump's character flaws, which are very sizable, right? Like, and get past the mean tweets and stuff like that. Like, dude, his policies were fantastic. I mean, like, if people didn't get swept up in the hysteria and this sort of like this tribalism about he must go, he is the bad guy. His policies were fantastic.
I mean, the wall, like all they talked about was the wall, how bad it is. Now they're like, we should build the wall. And like, dude, I live in New York City where legitimately the Mayor Adams right now, like Cardi B just came out and she's like, this is a disaster for the city. They're closing all libraries on Sundays. They're cutting back on the police, which is like the last thing they need to be doing here. All these like social service programs cutting back specifically because of the southern border.
Dude, your mayor, Eric Adams, like, he said harsher criticism about the migrants than any Republican ever did.
Yeah.
I mean, like if Donald Trump said that they were ruining America, like he literally said that they're ruining the city. Like, dude, that was so hardcore.
Yeah.
And he like doubled down and like that was his talking point.
Yeah. Well, the thing with New York is, one, they're the sanctuary city. I didn't know this till very recently, actually, but New York has a thing here. It's called duty to house. I believe that's what it's called, where essentially you can't be homeless in New York City. Like, New York City has a law from like the 60s where essentially like it's not like another city where they'll do their best to find you a bed, but if all the beds are full, then they're like, sorry, come back tomorrow.
So they have to open enough shelters.
They have to go.
No,
they have to go get you a hotel room. Like, if you need somewhere to sleep in New York City and you do not have they have to get you somewhere. So all the migrants are coming here and they're staying at hotels like down the street from me. I'm near Madison Square Garden right now.
I did hear that they were opening hotels. Oh god.
Yeah. So like
it's the collapse of America, dude. There's I don't know who coined it, but there's like somebody came up with this term called an ineptocracy, where it talks about how society gets so dumb that the only way for somebody to possibly even get elected is to cater to the dumbness.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where like if somebody comes up and actually says what needs to be done, then the vast majority of people are going to be like, what do you mean work? Where's my stuff? I want free stuff. I mean, like, dude, in 2020, it was literally like a competition for the Democrats to see who could give more stuff away for free.
Pretty much.
I mean, like Elizabeth Warren wanted to give gays reparations. Okay. she did. She said that she wanted to give them tax rebates for people who are like married in state. I still don't acknowledge it, people who are married in states that acknowledged it before it was like a federal law in 2015.
Yeah.
So she started running on literally like saying that they should get a tax rebate for those years that they were deemed married before it became a federal law. It's like, are you kidding me? So it's free college, free debt, and I'm tired of these kids saying like, hey, I want my free college and get my student loan forgiveness. Like, dude, if you got a college graduate, like, you're gonna make like 20 or 30 grand a year more than like an average person. And then, these kids will get out when they get their first job, if they're making whatever, 60, 70 grand, they're gonna go buy like a $50,000-$60,000 car, or especially like some of these higher end jobs, they're gonna go get a Beamer or Mercedes, and they'll be fine with an $80,000 car loan for 5 or 6 years. But God forbid, you got your,
the problem too is there
50
is
grand.
Yeah, there is so many just like useless degrees like now, probably more so than ever, and America is unique in that like you can legitimately get a degree that's absolutely worthless, other than teaching that same thing to somebody else, which is essentially what a Ponzi scheme is, and be in debt for 200 grand or something like nuts.
But I think a lot of college does have a purpose. I know, like Charlie Kirk is like, college is a scam. It's like, well,
no, it's not a scam. No, to say like wholesale college, that's not true.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want my engineers to learn on YouTube. Like, I would like them to go to a college.
In certain things, I think it is good. Go learn some business classes. You could argue, you could listen to podcasts. And,
But I'm just saying, like, gender studies, like stuff.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Like the joke is, if you're going to be a philosophy major, like, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to teach philosophy. Right? And that's the same thing with
Ponzi
same thing with gender.
Point. So I have a question actually from one of the subscribers to the show, Kenneth. This is you kind of briefly touched on this, but so this was his question from the Patreon. He says, how far back do you think Freemasonry goes? Do you think Hiram Abiff is allegory for Demole and Freemasonry morphed from Knights Templar? And or do you think they really believe it's an ancient order back to time of Solomon? Do you cover?
There might be that's a complex thing. I mean, it is a fascinating subject to see how it sort of developed from stonemasonry into, which was called operative masonry into speculative masonry, or the kind of the spiritual masonry, and how they used the stonemasonry tools and work for like allegories to try to explain the universe and things like that. And then they say the official lodge went back to, I think, 1200s or something like that. You can't really know, because I'm sure that whatever they're saying is like mythology in some sense, or kind of like blurs the line between mythology and history. But it's a fascinating thing. I mean, it's, they say, oh, we're not a secret society, we're a society within secrets. I don't even say that they're even all
Can
bad.
Anybody join the Freemasons?
Yeah.
I think
you gotta be recruited, or you gotta get like sponsored.
Yeah, so it's basically like just like a friend of a friend. Like you need to know somebody. You can't just like walk in off the street.
And then there's two different main branches. There's the English Masonry, which is 3 degrees, which is a little deceptive, because when you're the 3rd degree, then it's like you're a master mason. Like, wow, you must be this like big time guy. And then you have the Scottish Rite, which then goes up to the 33rd degree, and then you get all those interesting ideas about what are they doing? What are they teaching? Is there, like even like Manly P. Hall said that there's there's an inner circle within Masonry that kind of operates as the invisible, sort of like in a sense like the Illuminati, basically, which then you could get into Freemasonry. It was probably like an extension of the ancient mystery schools, which were, sort of the early universities. And then even if it didn't start off, even if it started off well-intentioned, Manly P. Hall even says that like it got hijacked from within because power is alluring, and especially when it's hidden. And so even if as a whole, just like you can't blame all white people for the ills of society, you can't blame any one group, but there's always going to be a core within them. Like I think the P2 Lodge over in England, which was like literally just a known mafia with had ties in with like the the Vatican and all this.
Well, there's a lot of masonry like symbolism in like, isn't there like all the money and stuff has like all these little
Yeah.
kind of Easter eggs.
Well, some of the founding fathers were Freemasons, but even back then, it was almost seen kind of like as an alternative to religion, basically, because they got kind of turned off from Christianity. So they saw this as sort of teaching spirituality and teaching morality as a sort of like a universalist kind of religion. So like in a sense, the higher levels, I mean, it I think even like Albert Pike admits that it is like a religion.
Yeah. Like legitimately. Yeah. It's there's somebody, I can't remember who on Twitter right now, but he's been posting I can't remember what his name is, but he's been posting like,
oh yeah, he
You know what I'm talking
infiltrated
about?
the lodge.
Yeah, he like infiltrated the lodge, and he's like been posting all the
Yeah.
the videos or whatever stuff like that. So I'm not sure. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up very shortly. Where's the best place that people find you? I saw. Did you get kicked off of Twitter? Why is there a year between your tweets?
Oh, that's a good question. I broke my Twitter addiction, and now I'm back. I fell off the wagon, but
Oh, okay.
it sucked in so much of my time that I quit Twitter, and I didn't make a big deal like, I'm quitting Twitter. This is just a way, one day I was just like, just wastes too much of my time. And for like over a year, I didn't tweet. And if you're a public figure like us, it does suck you in, right? Like maybe some of the audience might not get it, but like it just has that allure of.
I mean, it's just like a dopamine. It's a dopamine machine.
It is. Yeah. And it is interesting to see like, ooh, did any celebrities like retweet me or like my tweets, and like, and I'm sure you've had probably some pretty big names liking your stuff and retweeting, following you, and it's validating on one level, but it is also, for me, it just was wasting so much of my time. So I was like, okay,
I don't know if you know James Corbett. You know James Corbett from the Corbett Report?
Yeah.
I had him on about a month ago, and he's just like, put it away. He's like, he just deleted all the stuff. He's like, I'm not.
It's bad. And I think YouTube's different because it takes more to produce a YouTube video or to do a live stream than like firing off some tweets. And just, the way that it's designed is, and then you can't almost help but kind of like follow the threads and like see what people are saying. And so, the only reason I came back is because I punked Fox News.
Yeah,
you saw this like last
State
month
thing.
And people were talking about it. Yeah,
Morgantown,
people were talking about it like they already knew that it was me, and I was like, okay, I better kind of clarify and be like, I kind of wanted a little credit, but people already knew that it was me.
Yeah.
But then I wanted to kind of like clarify and be like, okay, look, there was no active threat at that time, so I kind of like issued a statement over there, and then I broke my addiction, and then now I'm back. So I am contemplating quitting again. That's why I am a YouTuber. That's kind of that's my main platform. And I do find it just.
How do you, when you do something like that with the Fox News? For people who don't know, you basically called in and you just were talking shit on Fox News about.
Yeah, they were so stupid. Yeah, they let me
call
on
the newsroom kind of thing. Be like, hey, I'm at this thing.
Yeah, well, sort of. Yeah. There was a live incident. There was a shooting at a college. For those who don't know, and they were taking calls, and they had some student's mother on, and she didn't know what was going on. The student wasn't an eyewitness, and I just thought, I'm like, God, this is just what idiots they are. And then I kind of had the Captain Jenks idea where he was Howard Stern's guy who used to call in and punk these shows. And so I just called him and I was like, hey, I was there, and and I came up with a fairly plausible explanation for what supposedly happened. And dude, they didn't check at all. Like they just put me live on air. And the funny thing is, like, I acted as like I told them I was Tyrone, and I acted, and used my Tyrone accent.
Yeah.
And that's how I talked with the producers as well. Like or whoever they answered the phone. Like when I called them, I was like, yeah, I was there, and it was a poker game, and I was just talking like a total idiot. And they put me on, and then as soon as I was on air, Danny saw this. But for those who missed it, then I just, before getting to what supposedly happened, I just started saying how, well, first we were watching Tucker Carlson's show. And he's great. It's too bad that you guys fired him, and Fox basically sucks. And they
Fox sucks now. And then they kind of finally figured out. So
that broke my addiction, or that I fell off the Twitter bandwagon. But
back. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna wrap this up. I'm curious. So what? I guess I'm gonna. This may be a little open-ended question, but what are you like kind of the most worried about right now?
all roads next year lead to chaos, man, because if Trump gets convicted on some of these charges, and he's facing 4 different jurisdictions, 91 different counts, like he's going to probably be found guilty on.
I'm friends with Martin Shkreli.
Yeah.
So I'm friends with him. He's obviously knows a bit about the prison
getting
system.
railroaded from the legal system.
Yeah, he's very certain, and he's been right about everything pretty much so far with like FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. But he's basically seems to think that because he had a similar thing where Trump's bail is going to get revoked and he's going to be remanded and have to basically. And that's
Let's go
like,
through
that's
some
super
of the.
easy to. He's like that's super easy to have happen. It's not a major thing.
Well, let's go through some of the scenarios here. Scenario 1, he gets convicted. And they reject his appeals and they expedite sentencing and sentence him to prison by July, okay, or before the election. So then what do? Like, are they going to send him to an actual prison? Are they going to send him to a military base? Are they going to send him to home confinement for security reasons? Right? Are they? I mean, they could say for security reasons to put him on house arrest, right? He could. I can't see it happening, but anything could happen. He could accept a plea deal and just, say plead no contest, basically. Not guilty, but plead no contest, and then drop out of the race. Okay, that he's a pretty bullheaded guy to do that. I can't see that happening, but it could. So like, what happens to the country if he is in prison or detained, and then when you're in prison, like Owen Schroyer just got sent to solitary confinement because he was on a call with somebody and then they recorded the call like with his knowledge to then release a statement to his audience. And so then they said, well, that was a violation of the policies. So now you're in solitary confinement. So if Trump is sentenced to prison in any way, shape or form, whether it's an actual cell, a military base, house arrest, they could easily say, dude, you're not allowed to give interviews anymore. Otherwise, then we're going to do this and we're going to do that. So like, dude, I really think this is the last 6 months, eight months of what we knew as America. And then let's say he miraculously, it's a hung jury, okay? Which is the only outcome. I don't think it would be not guilty. There's going to be some people on there, but you could have one juror who holds out, right? So he gets hung juries. They can't retry it. They try to retry it. Another hung jury, whatever. There's going to be rioting like we've never seen before.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so like, because they're going to think this is the rise of Hitler again, and he's escaped justice.
It's the rise of Hitler again.
again. Even though more black people voted for him in 2020 than they did in 2016, despite 4 years of demonizing him as everything in the book, right?
Yeah.
So, and then if he loses the election, let's say he beats everything and loses it, just everything. And I equate this with like tax day, right? Like most people don't do their taxes until like a couple days before, the night before, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just unpleasant. So you're like, just put it off until it's like, oh man, I've got to do this today. So like, I don't think people are thinking through the possible outcomes of like what's going to happen. Because it's like, oh, he got off with the Mueller thing. He got off with the impeachment twice.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing it's just a circus. This is a whole other ballgame. This is the criminal justice system that's taken over by
separate indictments.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, man. It's going to be chaos. And then just maybe he'll, like, what do you think? Do you think he would actually take a plea deal and like no contest?
No,
like,
because
I can't see.
I think he would want to he's like, if you want to find me guilty, like
that's not in his.
That's
DNA,
on you, and you're gonna have to live with those because he'll probably, he'll know.
And then,
he goes,
and then here's this. Let's take that a little bit further. If he gets convicted and sentenced to house arrest and wins the election, are they going to swear him in then? They might not swear him in. Like, how do you get sworn in? Can you swear him in virtually? Can his lawyers come and, like, what if they deny swearing him? What if they deny? Yeah. And then if he gets convicted, which he's probably getting convicted on some of these things,
you gotta figure
I don't see any way around it.
Isn't there 91 separate counts?
Yeah.
You gotta figure one.
So like, if he gets convicted and is sentenced to prison, then like, the best of the worst case scenario would be if Gavin Newsom or Joe Biden, if he's still in the race, wins. So people are like, oh, Joe can't make it. He's going to drop out. He might be replaced. But like, dude, they voted for John Fetterman, who was meant to be handicapped, right?
Yeah.
Over a celebrity TV doctor. So like, they don't care. They'll vote for old Joe. So if he loses and is convicted, then the best of that worst case scenario would be for whoever the Democrat president is to pardon him, to try to unify the country and be like, look, we're going to let him out of prison to unify the country. All we wanted to do was stop him from actually being president. And see, like, Joe Biden wouldn't even be running for re-election if Donald Trump didn't run for re-election, right? Because Biden would look weak if he ducked out and like didn't want to face a rematch, right? So if Trump just said like, you know what, okay, I'm going to retire. If he never would have ran again, Biden would have been like, I'm retiring too. All I wanted to do was stop him from being president. I did it. Mission accomplished. I'm gone. But now Biden had to run for re-election because he would look weak. And now if they pull him and replace him with Gavin Newsom, the Democrat Party's going to look weak because the replacement should be Kamala Harris, but she's unelectable. And, you see what I'm saying? Like the line of
it's kind of like
just
a guarantee. There's no real
Dude, I think like
there's no
the horrors
kind of golden bridge here.
The horrors that are going to happen, I think that everybody is sort of like in denial about it, just kind of like mentally pushing it off because they don't want to think about it. Because
are you a fourth turning guy? Do you know about that? The fourth turning?
I know a little bit about it. I'm just more of a like
this is
a balkanization of the country where like the Democrat regions and even Democrat cities within Republican states are just insane and dangerous.
Well,
and then
my city's gonna be
Republicans riding like we've never seen. Dude, they had to double the size of the fence outside the White House after Black Lives Matter surrounded the White House in 2020 when they set the St. John's Episcopal Church on fire during the George Floyd riots, dude. So like that fence now is double the height of what it was because they were worried that they were going to breach the fence. So I don't want to be like a pessimist and like it's all doom and gloom, because like the best case scenario is still going to be there's going to be so much chaos that if Trump wins, they're going to riot so bad that it's going to be dangerous to go out in.
And I mean, just think about what we just said about New York. You're like, and into the teeth of police cutbacks because they don't have money because Trump never got the wall built in some sort of.
It's just going to be bad. All roads lead to chaos, man. Like it's there's no easy way out, and then the repercussions from whatever happens is going to be years. I mean, like there's no coming back from trying to throw a president in prison, and if they throw him in prison, it's just going to be bad. So I'm like a locals guy, like even I try to disconnect and tune out on the weekends a lot of times, and that's why I don't give a lot of even people in the business, my phone number, because like I just like to have a separation where like I'll check my email, I'll check my DMs. I want to be able to like tune all that stuff out and get some peace of mind, because it's going to be so insane on a national level. But like unless you're in one of those big cities, your little suburb in Minnesota or Texas or wherever. Like Bill Hicks used to say, did you ever see that joke where he's talking about CNN and then he goes outside, he's like, where is all of this stuff happening, man? He's like, war, famine,
depression,
death. He's like, where is all this stuff happening, man? So like you can sort of get a warped sense of reality, and even in like media analytics they call it mean world syndrome, where if you consume too much media about certain things, or even like watch local news in certain areas, you'll see all the crimes and the murders and the robberies, and you sort of get it's terrible, and there's a lot of it, but like you can get a warped view of what's happening.
Just like a kind of
you start thinking like exactly. It just you start thinking it's all around you when it's distanced, and it might not directly affect you, but it's going to be bad. It's going to be painful. It's going to be, I don't think anybody can even predict. Like, I've mapped out like all what I can foresee as all possible scenarios. and there could be, the black swan, something else that nobody's ever seen. Or, wow, I never thought that would happen. But seriously, like, what are the options? He wins and it's chaos. He gets convicted, he escapes the charges and it's chaos. He gets convicted, it's chaos. He takes a plea deal. I can't see that happening. No. DeSantis could beat him. Maybe. I can't see that happening unless he puts his foot in his mouth big
Heart
time.
Attack?
He could have a health issue. Yeah, he could have a health issue. Yep. And then DeSantis would get in and kind of take that baton.
But again, if like a there'll still be some portion of the country who's just like, they won't even take that at face value.
Yep.
They're gonna be
not only that, but then you're gonna have the DeSantis crowd. If DeSantis, supposedly beats him, right, in the primaries and becomes the nominee, short of him dropping out from a health issue or taking a plea deal, there's going to be a lot of people who still just aren't going to vote. They're going to be like, DeSantis stole, I'll hold my nose and be like, okay, dude, let's get him in, God forbid if he gets in and picks Nikki Haley as his VP, I'm just going to be like, are you kidding me? But it's just chaos. Every scenario
is bad.
In every day. We're going to the holidays here, so it's going to be like a little normal, a little more calm. And then come January, dude, it's just going to be unbelievable.
And who knows what the economy is going to be like at that time. And yeah, it's
and then you don't even put into that mix, like, I'm trying not to, like, World War III.
Politics,
well, if stuff really sparks off, if
like
China takes Taiwan, and if stuff really, if other people start attacking Israel, or they, that whole mess could just it could continue to just go bad. So as bad as it is, you got to just think local, local friends, family, community, even certain states are going to be fine. But I really wouldn't be surprised if it could be 10 or 20 years. I don't know if you want to wrap up, if you got to wrap up, you have time constraint, but I wouldn't be surprised if the United States breaks apart into different regions, at some point where, like, people are talking about Texas seceding, but that was always been like a fringe cause, right? Yeah. There's even a movement in Oregon to have certain counties break away and become part of Idaho, the Greater Idaho movement.
I mean, I don't know if you remember, but in '94, I believe Quebec tried to leave Canada, and it was like this close.
Okay, so it wasn't even a fringe. That shows I'm American because I just don't.
The province of Quebec did a referendum, and I think they voted. I want to say it was 51-49 to stay.
To just become their own republic or their own country. Yeah. And if things get really bad, dude, because if the Democrats win the election and if they have Supreme Court picks and if they take back the Supreme Court and they start passing crazy legislation like the Equality Act, which is basically you're going to have to identify, agree with anybody's gender identity. Okay. Nationwide, so I don't think states could even fight that. So what recourse do you have as a state that has businesses and schools when the federal government is demanding that you must acknowledge a gender non-binary teacher and you can't fire them or that's discrimination? Okay, or you'll get sued by the Justice Department, by the Justice Department. What recourse do you have at that point other than to break away and secede and form, you can't, you don't have any legal,
and
you
especially
when
they start trying to screw with your kids, obviously in California, they just had to pass that bill, which was vetoed by Gavin Newsom, where essentially the affirming your kid's gender thing, right?
Yeah.
Where they were that was essentially the writing on the wall there was we'll take away your kids if you don't go along with this.
And it could be like a Hollywood movie where it gets right up to the edge where it looks like all hope is lost, and then we somehow pull out, pull society back onto the rails. But I'm very worried, and that's why it's your job to entertain us, to find the the humor,
until I obviously get kicked off of everywhere, though.
You just got Rumble, and like I said, hopefully.
See, I like Rumble, but the problem is Rumble doesn't have an algorithm or anything, or not even an algorithm. I have more subscribers on Rumble than I have on YouTube, just for my comedy sketches, but it's not even close. On YouTube, a video will do 25,000 views, and then on Rumble it'll do 500. They just don't show them for whatever reason, or people just are more on Rumble to watch because my live streams do okay. I think people are
it's
more
mainly
on Rumble to watch live streams.
Yeah, it's a it's a live streaming platform, but
Yeah.
they got growing pains, but
Yeah,
but
for
still,
sure. I'm like, I like what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you probably got, don't name drop, but I mean, I suspect there's, some pretty big names that follow you and, that maybe you communicate with privately that hopefully are trying to open doors for, for the next generation of comedians because like, I don't know how old you are, but like, dude, I grew up in the 90s, which was like the last so it was Chris Farley. Like, were you watching Chris Farley on SNL and stuff?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
When I was a kid, yeah.
So, that was like the last era of like Saturday Night Live being, being fun.
Like really good. Yeah. The Will Ferrell years were pretty good, but that was like when you look at that cast of like mid 90s, it was like an all-star team. It was like the dream team for basketball.
Chris Rock. I mean,
like even
but that was
like Kevin Nealon, like Spade, Sandler, Norm, like it was crazy.
But because of our kind of the parallel, economy, the parallel society that's forming now, like we don't need them. You don't need to. I'm sure, like when you were younger, you probably dreamed of like, I'm going to be on Saturday Night Live. And it's like, okay, that'd be nice. But like, even if it doesn't happen, like you don't really need them. We're creating our new, our parallel economy with other shows. You could do live, pay-per-view on Rumble now.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, so
a
really,
lot of the stuff that I wanted to do doesn't even like exist anymore. When I started getting into comedy, and I was like, wanting to do like, wanted to be like a writer and stuff. And I'm like, that stuff like barely, there's so few people who even do that stuff anymore. Like, people can't name comedy shows and.
Yeah. Well, Comedy Central is almost like MTV. Like, do they even have comedy on there now? Like, I can't even think of the last time I cared to tune in to Comedy Central.
It's just like reruns. And when they do try and put stand-up on there now, like I was saying on Tim Pool last night, I've said it here before, they have 11.5 million subscribers on the Comedy Central YouTube page, and they'll do a live premiere of like a stand-up thing, and 300 people watch, tops.
Well,
like,
it's probably like
watching right now, and this channel has 4,000 subscribers.
It's probably for the same reason, like sometimes, we all do it, where you might subscribe to a YouTube channel and then just for whatever reason you just you kind of stop watching. I subscribe
it's not for whatever reason though. The reason was you subscribed when it was Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle. And
exactly.
This diverse bullshit.
But I guess my point is like people didn't unsubscribe.
Yeah.
So it's still like in their subscription.
Of course,
they're still technically subscribed, but they haven't watched it. And almost YouTube should
showing it to them.
Exactly. YouTube should actually, like sometimes they'll clear out the bots and the, people who haven't logged into their accounts in forever. Yeah. What they really should do, but then this would harm, the mainstream channels. They should almost unsubscribe people from channels if they haven't watched anything from that channel for like 2 years or something like that, right?
I mean, it would honestly, for something like, it's just embarrassing for Comedy Central. Like, it's an open thing in like stand-up comedy and comedy world where it used to be like, oh, I got a Comedy Central half hour, that's so cool, and now people are kind of like sheepishly like, whatever. Like, it's not like particularly cool thing to get a stand-up.
It's got to be so tough now too, though. Like, even if you have a cutting edge special, like, because there's so much stuff, like it's hard to be like, hey, how are you going to get 500,000 views on a comedy special that that you $5 on Rumble or whatever, when it's like we're just bombarded by so much stuff where, as good as it is, and even if you're going to have like that core fan base who's gonna tune in, but then you're still gonna miss like so many people.
Yeah. That's a tough question. I mean, most people give their stand up as free at this point, like like especially on.
Well, I guess comics make a lot of your money through like actual in-person shows.
Yeah,
right?
in-person.
Is that
shows,
how
exactly.
like kind of the bread and butter of?
That's kind of the goal. That's kind of like the bottom of the funnel. Is you kind of give all the stand-up away for free online, and then people come see you live.
But I think we'll have other companies like the Daily Wire, and my main beef is just with Ben Shapiro being a never Trumper and a big neocon and whatever. But I think overall, Daily Wire, even though they are kind of that kind of brand name kind of conservative stuff, like. I think that a lot of their hosts are great, and with them they started Bent Key, the cartoons for the kids. So like I think you'll see companies like that step up to replace the old Comedy Central type thing, where it's like, hey, there's this new, production house that's like where all the stand-up goes, or producing movies, because even
Netflix is still actually, to be honest, like they still do a decent job, like giving comics. The problem is just like they have so much content that, to a degree, like they can't just help you. They might pop your thing up on the front page for a day or two, but if it doesn't really get crazy, and they are really much on like retention numbers, like what you were saying, and like watch time. So if you don't get really good watch time, you're not going to stay on the front page.
Would you like, if you got a Netflix special, like obviously some, they'll pay the bigger names, but like, how do independent comedians, like, do they cut a deal where it's like you get a percentage of the profits based off of the views?
No.
Do they buy that content?
They just buy it from you. It's a total black box. That was what the whole writer's strike was about, because they're like, they'll just buy your thing. They'll say, hey, you're this famous. This is what we think you're worth. Take it or leave it. And they don't share. You can't, like, I have friends who I have 20 friends who have Netflix specials. You don't call them up and say, how's this doing? They don't tell you. They're like, that's our business.
So they don't even tell you how many people watched it.
No, they won't tell you how many views you have. Like, maybe certain people might get, like, they might kind of give you some breadcrumbs, but for the most part, that's like proprietary information.
Okay,
they won't share it to you. They'll be like, they'll say it's doing well or whatever, but like, if you're the comedian, you're like, yeah, all my social medias are like, Shane Gillis knew that he had the biggest comedy special most recently, because you're just like, everyone was talking about it, and I'm sure you got 200,000 followers everywhere, and like, it just kind of adds up. All right, I got to wrap this up because I got to piss so badly. Mark, where can people find you if you want them to find you, except for the weekend?
YouTube, my home base. Don't go to my Twitter, but just find me on YouTube. And I'm shadow banned, for a large extent. Like, I think they cap my views at 250,000 per video, which maybe my standards are too high, but like, it's kind of a running joke with my audience that the channel doesn't grow anymore. Right. So like, you have to pretty much like go to the channel, if you want to see it. But
and it's demonetized.
Not the whole channel. No, just I'm still okay, but it's still like, I'm still walking that same minefield that that everybody else is walking. And come there directly, and it's kind of interesting like that. And thanks for having me on, dude. My
pleasure. This is so cool. I'm glad, because I know you don't do this a lot. This is
I don't do it a lot. I'm just I don't like interviews. I'm such a perfectionist. Like I said, I just don't like one little. Sometimes I'll go and watch my interviews, and I just don't. I'm like, God, I can't even finish a sentence without like changing directions,
you're
stumbling
awesome.
Or whatever. And maybe that's like kind of an artist sees the flaws in their work, sees the flaws in their work. Right?
I mean, that's a classic thing with like a lot of comics. You hear it all the time with comedians, is they'll be like, man, I forgot this one line from a joke, and you're like, nobody knows that though. You're the only person who knows that. Nobody knew that you forgot a line.
And I'm like, well, it's not gonna be. I can't be funny. It's gonna be like, I could at least like polish my stuff or whatever. But I admire you, and that's why I was like, oh, come on, I'll come and talk to you. Like, I see your stuff going viral. It's good. You're one of the cutting edge. So hopefully I try to give you a little boost with my community tabs. So hopefully we drove some people over there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is up there as this or probably War Mode. I don't know if you know those guys, but this is probably up there as
good. Even being shadow banned. So no, man, keep in touch, dude, and then hopefully you get your Netflix special.
Absolutely. And, I'm actually submitting to Netflix next week, so we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Good. Well, we'll definitely wrap this up, but I think Dave Chappelle is kind of pushing that boundary a little bit, So if they're gonna, that might be one of the last bastions.
I don't want to give away his like jokes or whatever, but I saw him a club I work at in New York, The Stand. He does like these basically workout sets. He'll do like an hour at like midnight, these midnight shows, and they're like, tickets are $200, but it's only 100 seats, so they like sell out kind of instantly. And he might do 2-3 hours sometimes, but like some of his jokes are legitimately like, yeah, Leah Thomas is a man. Like he's like, do people have to check
their cell phones in clubs like that, so they don't record?
Yonder pouches, all that stuff. But I'm gonna see, but like he's going hard. Like the stuff that you thought was like this, and because he's also like done. He's like, I'm done talking about trans people, and then that was kind of like an untouchable thing where it was the crazy like thing where you can't say that men or women or aren't.
So like Orwell said, dude, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. So.
Absolutely. And go buy your book, The War on Conservatives. I actually looked. It was like, I think it was at the top of its category, right?
I did, dude. I made it to number 4 on Amazon bestseller list, but I won't make it to the New York Times because that's just a curated list of bullshit, right? Recommended and favorites. So it should be, in the top 10 at least of New York Times nonfiction book for like last week, but none of my books ever. They just don't do it.
Wasn't Jordan Peterson had the same complaint where he's like, I've sold millions of copies of my book, but they don't like me, so I don't make their list.
Oh, maybe. I mean, it's a known.
Yeah, it's a known thing.
It's a known thing. Like it's in
and
the industry.
And it can be gamed as well. Like you could literally actually sell no copies of a book, but you could just like personally buy.
People will go and buy bulk buy and stuff like that. So
yeah.
But check the book out. That's I am. Aside from clowning around, I do have a serious side, so that's one of the reasons I did want to come on, just to kind of be like, I write books too. I'm a serious guy, so
yeah.
No,
well, I mean, cool, I'm kind of similar. Like I clown around, but then the show is generally actually a pretty serious show. But I'm very similar, and so I appreciate your time. Thank you again so much for coming on.
You better hang up, or I'm going to keep talking for the next 3 hours. So it's been great.
I'll just run the stream. Thank you very much, everybody who watched the show tonight. Go follow Mark. Go buy his book. If you want to support the show, get more show, patreon.com/lowvaluemail. No episode of The Bathhouse tomorrow night. I will see you next week with Yohan Grillo. Good night. My shit heroic. Empathic abilities, yeah, my face be also stoic. Bleep, blow up, nigga, that just means I'm working. They see me as a leader, so that's why I'm Captain Kirkin. These tracks from the stars, that much is for certain. You can fit his hit if you up or if you hurt. I'm raising my stock, not talking my feet in some Birkin. Number Johnny 5, got a fucking short circuit. Bring the track to life when I spit phenomenal. When I hit, she feel that shit in her abdominals. These rappers make me laugh like comic view, they comical. You know I got a ball out, I hit the track running just like Sonic do. They don't want to turn on my light switch. Yeah, they was trying to get me on my hype shit. Yeah, they don't want to turn on my light switch. Yeah, and they tried to down me up some KO type shit. Yeah, they don't want to turn on my light switch. Yeah, now we pulling up fresh on some flight shit. They don't want to turn on my light switch. Yeah, they don't want to turn on my light switch. They don't want to turn on my light switch. Yeah, they was trying to get me on my hype shit. Yeah, they don't want to turn on my light switch. Yeah, then they tried to down me up some KO type shit. Yeah, they don't want to turn on my light switch. Yeah.